Ukraine. And the big fear I have is Iran. I really do believe we're letting Iran get too powerful.
Just a final thought on what will happen after the November election. If Donald Trump loses, do you believe he will accept defeat?
You know, I'll tell you what I'll do. Here's the way our system works. When a state certifies its results, our job in Congress is to accept that certification unless there's something tremendously off base. Last time, I voted to certify the elections. I heard the concerns of the president, and I thought that, on balance, it was an election worthy of certification. That's exactly what I'll do next time.
A final thought about Donald Trump. If he loses, is that the end of Donald Trump?
Well, if he loses, I don't see him ever running again. I think the MAGA movement will still exist, but we'll have to reevaluate the party, trying to take the best of Trump, the best of all of the figures in the Republican Party, and put it back together again. You know, the Labor Party had that same problem. The Tories now have it. You know, politics runs in cycles. If he wins, I think you're going to have a bigger Republican Party, working class people more attracted to the Republican Party under Donald Trump. So time will tell. Stay tuned.
Lindsey Graham, thanks for joining me on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa, live in downtown Winnipeg in our studios at CBC. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and on YouTube this morning. 3 minutes to 6 a.m. is the time. We're on air till 8:37. If you need us early on the commute, 788-3093. And another hot day ahead for today in Winnipeg. I was thinking yesterday would be the hottest day of the week, but the forecast shifted slightly. And today, once again, we're going to hit a high of 30. And with Humidex, it's going to feel like 34. Let's say good morning to the team. Mr. Abby Adeyemi behind the controls. Hello, Abby. Abby's also going to join us on air to cover the forecast. Good morning, Chloe Friesen. Chloe's directing the show and is also going to be on air with us covering the commute and picking up your calls if you have an issue. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who is behind the controls of YouTube. There's Kevin's hand saying hello to you if you're watching online this morning. Heather Wells is here also in our news center this morning. And as we always begin the show, let's find out what's making news in Manitoba with headlines.
Good morning. Well, Kathy Merrick, the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building tomorrow. Merrick died suddenly on Friday, and now you are invited to pay respects between noon and 5 tomorrow afternoon. Starting today, people are also invited to sign a book of condolence at the Manitoba Legislature from noon until 8 o'clock tonight. And a woman living in Osborne Village worries about safety around the homeless encampment in Fort Rouge Park. Danelle Huging has lived in the area for 12 years. She says lately she's faced break-ins, loitering, vandalism, and theft, and she blames the encampment. We're going to hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We also have coverage of that story between 7 and 8 o'clock this morning, so we'll have some details added to whatever we hear in the news as well, or whatever we will be hearing in the news. In addition, this morning on the program, coming up after 8 o'clock, we're going to hear more about what's happening with the food nutrition program that was announced in schools, the NDP funding this, calling it universal. There's also funding coming from the feds. Today, we're going to take you over to Niji-Makwa School. We're going to hear what impact this is having on the students and to find out more about how they're building what the principal there calls a small restaurant on one of the floors to deal with this, which is a good thing. Deal sounds like a negative thing. They're very excited. And in the first hour of the show, we're going to hear more about a gun control bill that passed by the Liberals last year federally, but civil groups are now calling to put it into force, and we'll hear about that.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Jan Martel's smash hit novel Life of Pi has been transformed into a play. Tom will talk to Jan about the inspirations that led to Life of Pi all those years ago and why you might want to be a little less reasonable.
I wasn't feeling life. I was just sort of observing it sourly, and that's no way to live.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We begin in Gaza, where a designated humanitarian zone is now the site of an attack. Overnight, Israel's military launched airstrikes on al-Mawasi displacement camp. It says it was targeting a Hamas command center. Palestinian officials say multiple tents caught fire and dozens of people were killed. Sasha Petrusek brings us the details from Jerusalem.
Allahu Akbar! The sound of grieving spreads across southern Gaza this morning amid what's left of a humanitarian zone set ablaze overnight. Singed and shredded tents, blood-stained sand, craters 9 meters deep. We were asleep when 5 or 6 missiles slammed into the houses and tents, says Ola Al-Sher. Al-Mawasi refugee camp is squeezed along the Mediterranean coast. Its residents directed to move into this designated safe zone by Israeli forces. Israel's military says it was targeting a Hamas command post embedded here, led by senior commanders directly responsible for the October 7th attacks on Israeli civilians. This morning, as bodies arrive at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, survivors ask, where is safe to go? They said go to Al-Mawasi, Tagreed Abu Asi cries, but when we went, they hit us. Where now? Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Jerusalem.
For the first time, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will go toe-to-toe in front of American voters. The two presidential nominees will take the stage in a 90-minute debate tonight. It is shaping up to be a critical moment in the U.S. election. The CBC's Caroline Bargut joins me now from Washington. And Caroline, what is at stake here?
There is so much at stake, and this is really U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris's time to define herself in front of the American public. Now, she and former President Donald Trump are neck and neck in the polls. The latest New York Times Siena poll has Trump actually inching ahead of her in the lead. He sits at 48%. She slipped to 47%. Now, 30% of the people who were surveyed said they didn't know much about Harris and that they needed to know more. So this is really her chance to show the public that she has what it takes to be president. Now, Trump's team has been trying to define her as weak and progressive, and this is what Harris expects he's going to do in tonight's debate. This is what she said on a U.S. morning show yesterday.
He plays from this really old and tired playbook, right, where there's no floor for him in terms of how low he will go.
You know, I'm pretty sure that Trump's people are going to try to keep him on topic and keep him away from taking personal shots at her or talking about her race or gender.
What are the big issues that could ignite tonight's debate?
Well, the biggest issue for American voters is the economy. So we expect that that is going to be front and center tonight. Now, Trump has said that he's going to cut taxes and raise tariffs on imported goods, while Harris plans to provide tax relief for small businesses. She also says that she plans to raise taxes on people making more than $400,000 a year. The border is going to be another major issue, which Trump is going to try to pin on Harris as she's part of the Biden-Harris administration. And then we also know that abortion rights is going to be a huge issue, which Harris really leads, and she's been very strong in her support for women's rights to choose, whereas Trump has been a little unclear lately as where he stands.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
The CBC's Caroline Bargut in Washington. Hundreds of doctors across India are defying the Supreme Court's order to return to work. They have been protesting the rape and murder of a trainee doctor last month. The doctors are demanding better, safer working conditions. The CBC's South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more.
Justice! Justice! It's been weeks of protest chants for these junior doctors. Livid that one of their own, a 31-year-old trainee doctor at a hospital in Kolkata in Western India, was raped and murdered while on duty last month. The state's junior doctors went on strike, trying to force public hospitals to implement better safety measures. But India's Supreme Court has now ordered them back to work. In a ruling that underlines a doctor's responsibility to the people they serve, lawyer Rohit Pandey explains. The court says if the doctors don't return to work by Tuesday evening, they could face disciplinary measures. But that threat means nothing to trainee doctor Kushi Tuki.
We are not afraid of adverse reaction at this moment because we are more afraid for our life.
Other doctors outside the Kolkata hospital where the attack took place say they won't stop until they see change.
Our patience is dwindling, but still the fire to fight back.
Even if they're skeptical, says Dr. Ria Bera.
They have assured us reforms like putting up CCTV cameras or better resting places for female doctors, which we actually lack.
She hasn't seen any extra security cameras, despite India's top court also pressuring the state government to monitor what hospitals are doing to keep their doctors safe. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Australia's government is vowing to introduce new laws to place a minimum age on social media access. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced his government will roll out a trial age verification technology. Children would be banned from opening social media accounts. The exact age limit and the parameters have not been set, but officials say the line would be drawn between the ages of 14 and 16. Parents across Australia have been increasing calls for more online protections for children. Federal Liberals are trying to flip the script at their caucus retreat in Nanaimo, BC. Some party insiders have resigned, and some MPs have been speaking up about an uncertain future. The Liberals are taking steps to look strong on the economic front. They're bringing in a big name, Mark Carney. He is the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and he's joining the retreat as chair of a task force on economic growth. Catherine Cullen is in Nanaimo with the latest.
Well, there's nothing like the threat of an election to focus the mind, right?
Caucus Chair Brenda Shanahan says there's a lot for the Liberals to sort out as they meet in British Columbia. Their deal with the NDP is dead, meaning an election could come at any time. In a bid to boost their economic bona fides, the Liberals are seeking help. Former Bank of Canada and Bank of England Governor Mark Carney. Shanahan is enthused.
I've read his book and certainly followed his career. This is someone with a very impressive professional background.
But the Conservatives, including House Leader Andrew Scheer, say it doesn't change the fact so many Canadians are struggling.
It doesn't matter what kind of paint they slap on the Liberal brand or who they're speculating might lead them into the next election. Liberal policies, 9 years of Liberal policies have done this.
Carney will address Liberal MPs today and attempt to put the spotlight back on the economy and off of questions about the Liberals' own political fate. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Nanaimo, British Columbia.
Сегодня мы выдвигаемся на фронт. Еду я.
That is a scene from the controversial documentary Russians at War. The press and industry screening at the Toronto International Film Festival is going ahead today. The film shows the war in Ukraine from the perspective of Russian soldiers, but Ukrainian officials call it propaganda. Michelle Song has more.
This film aims to whitewash the crimes of Russian soldiers.
Ole Nikolenko is the Consul General for Ukraine in Toronto. He says the Toronto International Film Festival has failed to address concerns over the documentary Russians at War.
Again, we really don't understand whether the festival is really cognizant of the gravity of the situation. And
Nikolenko says the film is Russian propaganda and will be joining members of the Ukrainian Canadian community to protest its initial screening. In a statement to CBC, the film's director, Anastasia Trofimova, denies those accusations. She joined a Russian battalion for 7 months on the front lines, characterizing the soldiers as ordinary guys. Ihor Michael Chizin is the national director of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. He says Trofimova is biased.
Concerned. Her background should obviously be a concern for people in terms of her previous employer being RT.
Russia Today, also known as RT, is the international arm of the Russian state-controlled television. More recently, Trofimova worked for Radio-Canada's Moscow bureau. That is before the Russian government closed it in 2022. Trofimova insists her movie is an anti-war film, but Nikolenko argues it's misrepresenting the realities his fellow Ukrainians are facing. Michelle Song, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Most read story at cbcnews.ca is about sunscreens made by Asian skincare companies. Those are not available here, but people really want them. We'll have the details at our main page, cbcnews.ca, on Asian sunscreens. I'm Marcia Young.
Hello, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thank you so much wherever you're joining us this morning. It is school day number 6, Tuesday, September the 10th, and it's going to be hot once again. Forecast in just a moment. I know I sound like a broken record, but we're going to be hot actually all week long. So Abby will talk more about that. This hour on the program, in case you missed it, yesterday, former Canadian fashion mogul Peter Nygard, who was found guilty last November of 4 counts of sexual assault, was sentenced to 11 years in prison. We're going to hear from a legal expert on what's next as he continues to face more sexual assault charges in Manitoba, Quebec, and the United States. So we'll build on what you may have heard in the news. In addition, this hour on the show, the Liberal government passed its gun control bill last year. Now, civil society groups are calling on the government to get a move on putting it into force, specifically so that guns stay out of the hands of domestic abusers. We're going to talk more about that. So stay tuned. You might recall, I was just reading about it this morning. In 2015, there was legislation put forward that didn't fully go through, but it would have done that in Manitoba, keeping guns out of the hands of people who have protection orders here. So we'll get the latest lay of the land and what that looks like across the country coming up. 6:11 right now. Heather Wells is in with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitobans will be able to pay tribute to the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs in a number of ways today and tomorrow. Included among them, there is a sunrise ceremony tomorrow morning, but also a book of condolence set up today at the Manitoba Legislature, and Merrick's body will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building from noon until 5 tomorrow. We'll bring you more about how and where you can pay tribute to Kathy Merrick coming up. As well, the first group of female police officers to join the RCMP 50 years ago are going to be celebrated this weekend at a reunion in Regina. Winnipegger Carol Briggs was part of the class of cadets known as Troop 17. We're going to hear about her experience coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
I saw some of our television coverage of her story last night as well, Heather. And all I could think about, and Jean-Paul and I were talking about this, was can you imagine being the first and what that would have been like for those women in their best moments, but then also in their most challenging moments as well, right?
Yeah, and things they weren't expecting, like speeding, when you're pursuing a suspect, and sometimes you might have to break the law, And so, yeah, interesting story.
And just trailblazing, right, for women.
That's exactly what people have said, yeah.
Absolutely, to that event on the weekend. All right, thank you. Can't wait to hear more.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on weather traffic-wise. Chloe, hello. Good morning, Chloe Friesen.
Good morning. Good morning.
And Abby Adiemi, hello and good morning.
Good morning.
So who wants to start, guys?
Is it a rock, paper, scissors morning again?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Rock, paper, scissors. I love that our YouTube shots on me. I'm doing nothing. Okay, there, Kev's got you on now. Who's winning?
I have paper. Abby's rock. I win.
Okay, there. I guess we're going to hear about the morning commute.
There's nothing going on.
And thank you, Chloe.
204-788-3093 if you do spot something out there that is slowing you down this morning.
Well, I don't think there's much change in our forecast actually either from yesterday, Abby. Hey?
Yeah, though yesterday this time we're below double digits, and today we're already starting close to 20s. Most of the regions near 20 degrees at this time. It's going to be another warm day. We're going to be seeing highs reaching around 30. Currently, Winnipeg is at 18 and clear for today. We're going to see more of a mix of sun and clouds with some local smoke, which we didn't feel yesterday. Will be moving in this afternoon, and then some breezy conditions, but that would bring warm air. So, it's not something that would cool you down because of that temperature warming up to close to 30, and with the humidity factored in, it's going to be near 34. Tonight, we'll see the skies clear up late in the evening. The smoke may linger, so you just want to prepare for that, and then we cool off to 12. In other regions, we're already seeing the north is at both hovering, the northern regions hovering around 15 degrees, and down south, we're seeing Brandon currently experiencing some thunderstorms this morning at 15 degrees, and some sun and clouds expected later in the day, and Brandon would also be getting to a high of 30. Other regions from Dauphin down to Morris is just hovering near 19 degrees at this time. It is clear. We're going to see sun and clouds, and local smoky waters in the forecast for most of the regions today. Clear nights, that's what we're looking at. But right now, Winnipeg, it is 18. Today calls for, more of a warm afternoon with some sun, clouds, and a local smoke.
we begin with news about Peter Nygard, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison. The 83-year-old disgraced Canadian fashion mogul sexually assaulted 4 women in his downtown Toronto office. Those attacks that we're referring to happened in that office between 1980 and 2005. After the decision yesterday, his lawyer, Jerry Wiebe, spoke to reporters.
I have had the chance to speak with Mr. Nygard. He understands the judge's reasons and he understands the basis for the judge's reasons. While he certainly doesn't agree with everything that Justice Goldstein says, he respects the judge's right to make the findings that he did. And I won't say he accepts the sentence because he most certainly will be appealing it.
So what comes next? Brandon Trask was asked that question, assistant professor in the Faculty of Law at the University of Manitoba. And he spoke with CBC's Faith Fundell yesterday on Up to Speed.
What do you make of the length of Nygard's sentence?
It was frankly right around what I was expecting. So the Crown had been asking for a 15-year sentence. The defense had suggested a 6-year sentence. So not saying this is always the case, but it's not unheard of, certainly, for the final number to sort of come down somewhere in the middle. And I think that's right around what I was expecting when I saw the 11-year mark today.
There for other sentences for sexual assault cases, how does this decision compare with other sentences? Is it close to what they usually see?
Yeah, so it is close to what you would normally see, but looking at some of the different, I guess, unique characteristics of Mr. Nygard here, I think there's an argument that this was actually really sending a message in the sense that, the defense, Jerry Wiebe, appearing for Mr. Nygard, had argued quite strenuously that, given his frail health situation and his advanced age, he should essentially have a reduced sentence. And Justice Goldstein really didn't give that argument a whole lot of weight, and in that sense sent the message that no, this is an individual who essentially committed some really horrific sexual offenses decades ago, and just because he got to continue living the life of luxury and wasn't facing criminal charges throughout essentially his prime, that should not be rewarded in the form of a lower sentence now that he's facing these charges in a more elderly state.
Is it unusual for lawyers like Jerry Wiebe to say that their client intends to appeal the sentence? What do you think about that?
No, I'm not surprised to hear that Mr. Nygard is planning an appeal, and certainly it sounds like he's planning an appeal of both the convictions as well as the sentence. I think certainly from what I've heard, Justice Goldstein's decision with regard to the sentencing, he very carefully addressed the arguments the defense had put forward and rejected most of them, at least with respect to the elderly consideration and the health-related issues.
He also said that he could not discount, quote, some exaggeration, unquote, on Nygard's part, right?
Yeah, that was an interesting addition as well. Yeah, no, very, very good point, where he said, he acknowledges there are some health considerations, but, certainly seemed to express concern that perhaps, not all of the health considerations are quite to the level that Mr. Nygard would have the court believe. So that was quite interesting. But like I said, I think we'll see what happens with respect to the appeal. But Justice Goldstein, I think, very carefully addressed all of the defense arguments on those points. So it may be a bit of a challenge to see whether the defense is able to convince an appellate court that there should be a difference, at least with regard to the sentence.
What message do you think the Superior Court Justice was trying to suggest when he described Nygard as a, quote, sexual predator?
Yeah, I think that was entirely accurate based on the findings that he made and he detailed. I mean, absolutely, this is an individual who preyed on people throughout a long period of time where there was at least a perceived power imbalance at the time. That makes him a predator, a sexual predator, as Justice Goldstein found. So I think it was very powerful language that Justice Goldstein used, but I think, frankly, it was appropriate given the findings of fact that were made as part of the sentencing decision.
He still has to go through the criminal justice system because he's facing trials in Montreal, the U.S., right here in Winnipeg as well, on similar charges. What do you expect, or what do you envision happening between now and when he does face those charges?
Yeah, this case, in sort of not just in Ontario, but for the other cases involving Mr. Nygaard have been just filled with delays at various points. In part due to health considerations, but then also with regard to Mr. Nygaard's ability to retain counsel. So, hopefully things will move more quickly going forward. Of course, he is, now convicted of these 4 offenses out of Ontario and sentenced on them. But he's presumed to be innocent in with regard to the remaining outstanding charges in Manitoba and Quebec and in the U.S. So I think, going forward, we'll certainly see the Quebec and the Manitoba charges dealt with. If it plays out like it did in Ontario, that will, may very well end up in trial sometime in the future. But in the interim, he's been sentenced, and we'll see what happens. After a potential appeal, but convicted and serving a sentence with respect to 4 convictions out of Ontario now.
That's Brandon Trask, an assistant professor in the Faculty of Law at the University of Manitoba, giving us more analysis of what might come next in the Peter Nygaard case now that he has been sentenced to 11 years in prison. He was in conversation there with CBC's Faith Fundel.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
6:22 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app or YouTube this morning. Sky is still dark out there. We've got local smoke to be contending with today. It's 18 degrees currently in Winnipeg. And if you're up making the lunches, getting ready for school maybe yourself, it is school day number 6 on the cycle. Well, if you have lived in Manitoba for some years, then you might cast your mind back to 2015 when Manitoba's then NDP Justice Minister was proposing legislation that would make it easier for victims of domestic violence to obtain protection orders. This was after the death of high-profile deaths of a couple of women who were killed with guns. And part of what they were putting forward at the time, the NDP government in 2015, was banning those who have orders against them, protection orders against them, from possessing firearms. Now, that legislation was left on the table, but that thought is coming up again because the federal government passed gun control legislation last year, and now civil society groups, including women's advocates, want the Liberals to speed up rolling out the measures across the country. The groups say guns in the hands of domestic abusers are a dangerous thing. Suzanne Zakour is Director of Legal Affairs with the National Association of Women in the Law, and she is with us this morning to talk more about the latest developments. Good morning.
Good morning.
How prevalent is the danger of gun violence against women in domestic abuse cases across this country?
It's particularly a key factor in cases of domestic murders or femicides. So having a firearm makes an abuser 10 times more likely to kill his partner. And we see that domestic violence perpetrated with guns is particularly prevalent in rural areas where people are more likely to own guns. And as you've mentioned, there have been examples of this. And in many cases, these men who killed their partner or ex-partner, there's been already previous reports to the police related to domestic violence. The police knew that there was domestic violence, that there were firearms in the home. So that means, in our view, that these murders are preventable if the right measures are in place.
At the time that Manitoba, the then government, was looking at this in 2015, at that time we would have been, if it went through, the first Canadian jurisdiction to have a firearms ban included in protection orders. Do those bans, are there bans like that in other provinces here in 2024 now, or not yet?
Not to my knowledge, but the Bill C-21 introduces just exactly that kind of ban. So a person who is subject to a protection order, like a restraining order, will lose their license automatically. So the license will be revoked and they will need to surrender their gun. So that's federal legislation that would apply in the entire country. However, even though the bill was adopted 10 months ago, the domestic violence provisions are not yet in force because the bill states that these provisions will only come into force when the government or Minister LeBlanc passed an order in council saying that they're in force. So basically, the government just needs to say, go, now they're in force, and adopt the regulations that would need to accompany these measures. So we're 10 months in and still nothing on that front. The measures are in the law, but not applied.
What concerns you about that?
Well, as I said, the domestic murders that we're seeing are preventable. And there have been several just even this summer and in the 10 months since the bill was adopted. We believe that these measures are important, that they can save lives. We contributed to some of the amendments that were made to the bill. The bill was adopted, was passed by the House of Commons and the Senate. So there's agreement that these measures are important, and there's no point in delaying them. If they're good measures that can save lives, they should already be have been brought into force a long time ago.
What specific assault weapons, can you tell us more about the assault weapons, rather, that you're talking about here in the context of the legislation, and what would you like to see done about them?
So in terms of assault weapons, these are weapons that are designed for military use and that should not be available to civilians, as the government agrees. However, it introduced only a partial ban on assault weapons. That means if you have an assault weapon, your weapon may become, illegal to own, and then you can just buy another model, a different model that would be a similar assault weapon, but that escaped the list of prohibited weapons. So there's a list that's very incomplete. There are hundreds of models that are not banned. So because of their role in mass shootings, we're asking the government to complete the ban on assault weapons to make our community safer.
What's the biggest hurdle, just to return to what we were talking about in terms of this has been on the books for 10 months, but it's not going through. Why is it so hard to get these measures implemented in your view?
So the majority of Canadians support these measures. However, there's also vocal opposition. We have a very strong gun lobby in Canada that will minimize the role that firearms play in domestic violence and say that only illegal guns need to be addressed or dealt with, or lying about the measures and saying that the measures are going to ban all guns or all hunting guns, which is not true. So this is why part of our work at the National Association of Women in the Law has been to explain what the measures are and why they're so important to protect the safety of women and children and our communities in Canada.
Suzanne, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
That is Suzanne Zekour, Director of Legal Affairs with the National Association of Women and the Law. We reached her this morning in Ottawa. It is 6:28 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio, the morning show. Thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be hot again today. Right now it's 18 in Winnipeg. It is mostly clear. Brandon is mostly cloudy, 16. Thompson's mainly clear and 15 degrees. The commute pretty good so far, really early, of course, but 788-3093 if you do want to reach us. I want to mention that I'm hosting once again Radio Noon all week long, and that means between 12:30 and 1 we're doing the call-in conversation. And if you want to call in today, we're actually going to lighten things up. We're going to be talking about something you may have done. Did you go to the Burt Block party this year, for example? I did, and I saw Sass Jordan and Tom Cochrane, all those back in the day bands that are making their way crisscrossing across the country. Well, between that and the different reunion tours that are also happening, groups that maybe have not played together that are back together. Of course, the big headline right now, the last couple of weeks, has been Oasis. We're wondering about some of the best shows you ever saw, or maybe the groups you wish would get back together and hit the road. So we're all concerts all the time this afternoon on the call-in. We're going to have a little bit of fun between 12:30 and 1. If you're already thinking about it and you can't make it and you're like, oh, I have a great memory, great show I saw, reunion tour, give us a call now on the listener line. It's 3797. So that's the noon listener line, but we'll have those conversations later. Speaking of coming up, after your 6:30 news, Crystal Ramlicam will be here with our business news. Air Canada is finalizing plans to suspend most of its operations, likely beginning on Sunday. There's a strike deadline that is looming, and obviously we are wondering what travelers need to know. So we'll get those details for you in so much as we know to this point. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, get set for another steamy day. 18 is where we're at right now. We're headed again to 30 with a mix of sun and clouds. A little bit of smoke in the air expected this afternoon. Cathy Merrick, the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building on Wednesday. Merrick died suddenly on Friday. The public is invited to pay respects to her between noon and 5 tomorrow afternoon. Photos are not allowed. Starting today, people are also invited to sign a book of condolence at the Manitoba Legislature. That's from noon until 8 o'clock tonight, and that book will be given to Cathy Merrick's family. Flags have been lowered at the Legislative Building until Merrick's funeral takes place in her home community of Pimachikamak, or Cross Lake, on Saturday. A woman living in Osborne Village worries about safety around the homeless encampment in Fort Rouge Park. That is where Tammy Bateman died last week after she was hit by a Winnipeg police cruiser in that encampment. Danelle Huging has lived in the area for 12 years. She says lately she has faced break-ins, loitering, vandalism, and theft, and she blames the encampment.
Only good walking to the encampment. So farther than judging, I mean, my bike's been stolen. I'll be honest, walking towards the river and along the encampment was the first place I looked for it. I was so mad. But it's also a dangerous thing to get into too because of the substance abuse and the mental wellness issues.
At least one other resident believes the break-ins are due to lower income housing and gang activity. The city councillor for the area says addressing the housing crisis has to be part of the solution. The Red River X has a plan to redevelop John Bloomberg Sports Complex. CEO Garth Rogerson says it covers all the bases, all the goalposts, the nets, the courts. The X wants to lease the city-owned facility in the arm of Headingley and refurbish it for multiple sports. Rogerson says baseball alone won't make this a home run.
Single-use facilities really are not sustainable going forward. It's very difficult to make them work. So the idea is you got to make it multi-use.
The City of Winnipeg says the X is the only organization that has made a proposal. A decision is expected next year. A lawsuit filed last week alleges the death of a 20-year-old woman at a Manitoba hospital was caused by improper dosing given by medical staff. The woman went to the hospital in Portage la Prairie in 2022 with high levels of acetaminophen in her system. Acetaminophen is a common pain reliever found in Tylenol. The lawsuit says the woman was given the antidote used for acetaminophen overdoses, but she was given too much, 66 grams over a 12-hour period instead of just 4. The woman's liver function worsened, and she died days later from the effects of fluid on her brain. The lawsuit says the amount of acetaminophen she took before going to hospital wasn't enough to have killed her. The woman's family is now seeking damages in her death. CBC News has reached out to Southern Health, which is responsible for the Portage la Prairie Hospital, but we have not yet heard back. Former U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris face off in an election debate tonight. It's going to be held in Philadelphia. It will be broadcast on ABC, also on CBC News Network. Kathleen Hall-Jamieson is a longtime observer of presidential debates.
Stakes higher for Harris because there's more capacity for her to be defined by Trump and to define herself than there is for Trump to do either for himself.
CBC News Network is going to begin broadcasting the debate at 8 o'clock tonight Central Time. You can hear more on that story as well as more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. The first group of female police officers to join the RCMP in 50 years is going to be celebrated this weekend at a reunion in Regina. Winnipegger Carol Briggs was part of that class of cadets known as Troop 17 50 years ago. She says she was the first in the class to start working And she started as a police officer at Winnipeg's airport before moving on to work in intelligence.
There were times when we had to surveil motorcycle gangs, and that was a little scary, along with exciting, I guess, and some car chases maybe, where we would be following someone and they, were going too fast, and we had to go fast and break a few laws along the way, I guess.
As the first women officers, Briggs says the group was the focus of a lot of media attention at the time. She says they were given men's uniforms, and some of the women were given purses for their pistols. While she doesn't see herself as a trailblazer, she says she knows a lot of other people do. You can read more on this story on our website, and we'll have more on the story coming up as well through the morning. You can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Can we just have a moment for women here?
Yes.
Purses for their pistols.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in the regional forecast now. Abby Adeyemi has our details. Hello, sir.
Good morning. Once again, we're expecting a warm and breezy day across the province. That's what we have on the menu for today. Temperatures will be racing up to 30s in most of the regions. We will see local smoke develop in several regions, and tonight and some clear skies with cooler temperatures. Winnipeg at 18 degrees at this time. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds today, and that local smoke will be in play sometime this afternoon. It will be warm and breezy. The day high will get to 30. It's going to feel closer to 34 with the humidity factored in, and then some clear skies late tonight. Heading west to Brandon, where we're seeing some thunderstorms at this time. It is 15 degrees. Today we'll also see a mix of sun and clouds. Once this dies down, that morning showers are still going to be hanging around, and then we will see a high of 30. Some local smoke and breezy conditions will also be felt in the afternoon. Thompson is at 15 and clear. Today will be mainly sunny. We're getting to a high of 23 for folks in Thompson. Churchill is sitting at 15 and cloudy at this time. Expect a mix of sun and clouds with the skies becoming some kind of an overcast. It's going to be a mix of the clouds and the sun doing its thing. A slight chance of showers later, and the winds will shift to a breezy afternoon, high near 22. Darwin is clear at 19 degrees at this time. Today will feature a mix of sun and clouds. Local smoke will be developing sometime in the afternoon. A breezy at times will get to a high of 28, though with a humidex factored in, it's going to feel close to 30. Gimli is clear at 19. The Interlake region will see a mix of sun and clouds. Local smoke also in the factored in there, high 30. Steinbach, same condition, clear skies 18, heading to a high of 30. Morris is clear at this time at 18 degrees. For the Pembina Valley region, we should see a mix of sun and clouds. Local smoke developing this afternoon, and the winds will be coming from the south, a high of 30. So it's just a warm start to Tuesday. Right now, 19 in Winnipeg. 19 is actually high for this time of the year, and it's going to be another warm day. We're just going to get to a high of 30.
Mother Nature is not cooperating with my plans to stop watering everything.
Nope.
Because usually there's some moisture, and right now, all my plants are
those plants
trees.
Are really gonna be needing water.
I know, and all the trees for the fall. All right, let's get into what's going on with our commute this morning. It's been pretty quiet so far.
Very quiet this morning so far, but of course, as your commute is getting started, or maybe you're already on it, if you spot something that is getting in your way, whether that is construction, a stall, collision, whatever you see out there, you can let us know by calling our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Chloe Friesen. Next, Crystalie Ramlakan is here with our business report. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So Air Canada is finalizing its plans right now to suspend most of its operations. So this will likely begin Sunday. There's a strike deadline that is looming, and a lot of people are wondering what they need to know if they're traveling.
Yeah, well, yes, the largest airline in the country and its low-cost subsidiary, Air Canada Rouge, are preparing to gradually suspend flights over 3 days. So Air Canada says contract talks with its pilots union remain far apart. And the main issue here is pay. Air Canada pilots have been pushing to close their salary gap with their higher earning U.S. peers who achieved lucrative labor deals last year. So the carriers operate nearly 670 flights every day. So unless an agreement is reached, the carrier or the union are likely to issue a strike notice or a lockout notice. And the shutdown could affect 110,000 passengers daily. So Air Canada is allowing customers with travel scheduled between September 15th and 23rd to make changes right now to their booking at no cost. And customers can also cancel flights and receive a credit for future travel. And if a flight does get canceled, Air Canada says it will notify those affected and they can get a full refund. But they say they will not be entitled to any additional compensation under passenger protection regulations. Now, if a shutdown does happen, Air Canada anticipates it would take 7 to 10 days for normal operations to resume. And the company is in talks with other airlines to accommodate passengers if they become stranded. And flights under the Air Canada Express brand, though, will continue to operate as they are operated by third-party carriers.
Let's stay with transportation news this morning. More vehicles, I understand, are being registered. Can you break down this data for us?
Yes. So in the second quarter, Canadians registered just over 511,000 new vehicles, and that's an increase of almost 8% compared to last year. It's the largest number of registrations since the third quarter of 2019. And new registrations of pickup trucks increased by almost 4%, while cars and vans decreased. And for the fourth quarter in a row, hybrid vehicles had the largest percentage increase, followed by electric vehicles. So new zero-emission registrations make up almost 13% of all new registrations. So for why we're seeing these increases, here's Charles Bernard, who is the lead economist at the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association.
The main reason why is inventory. If we would have spoken 2 years ago, numbers would have been a bit more complicated just because auto dealers didn't have the inventory that the consumers wanted. And that dynamic has completely shifted. You're seeing now dealer lots that are filled, and you're also starting to hear some publicity and marketing activities from the dealership to make sure that they get the ability to sell these vehicles.
And over half of new zero-emission vehicle registrations are in Quebec, and that's followed by Ontario and then British Columbia.
And Apple has unveiled a host of new technology, including iPhone 16. Can you recap this for us?
Yes, so Apple is entering a new artificial intelligence era. The iPhone 16 is the first model to be tailored specifically for AI. So Siri will be able to pull from your text messages, meaning can remind you of things like TV and music recommendations sent by friends. And the phone will also be able to create customized emojis on the fly. And there's a new customizable button that can be used for camera controls. So, of course, Apple has sold billions of iPhones, but in the past decade, there have been mostly minor upgrades to it, which has caused some people to hold off on buying a new one. And the company is hoping that these changes will help the recent slump in sales. Apple also unveiled new watches and AirPods, and it highlighted the watch's ability to help with sports and health issues, including finding longer-term conditions such as sleep apnea and detecting and responding to emergencies such as a fall. And the AirPods Pro 2 can be transformed into a clinical-grade over-the-counter hearing aid. But some health experts remain cautious about features serving as a replacement for proper testing or equipment. And Apple also announced that the titanium Apple Watch Series 10 is carbon neutral. Here's tech analyst Ritesh Kotek's take on that.
It's something that's just good corporate social responsibility. It's good business. I think they would be punished if it wasn't, but I don't think that people are going to be purchasing it because of those particular claims. And we're seeing these claims not just by Apple. We're seeing it from other organizations as well that are saying we're carbon neutral.
So a test version of Apple Intelligence, that's the AI software, will be available in U.S. English next month, and it will be available for other localized versions of English in December and Chinese, French, Japanese, and Spanish next year. How much is all of this going to cost? Well, the new iPhone 16 will start at $1,129, and the iPhone 16 Plus will start at $1,279 here in Canada.
I will wait for iPhone 17 when it can do my dishes and my laundry.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking this. I'm like, I'm not upgrading my phone. I don't want to learn how to use a new phone. I know that makes me sound like old-fashioned or a Luddite, but like I don't need to be on my phone any more than I already am.
Does it, though, make you sound like a Luddite in this day and age? Back in the day, I could see that argument, but right now, they just continue to add different features, and sometimes I can't even turn off the features that I don't want anyway. My phone will start translating what I'm saying and throwing it into a text, and do you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So
then you accidentally text someone you're not supposed to. Can Siri stop that?
yeah, people will make their own decisions. All right, what's happening in the markets?
In Europe, markets are mixed. Germany is down, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed as well. Japan is down, Shanghai and Hong Kong are both up. Oil is down 76 cents to $67.95 US per barrel. Gold is up 60 cents to $2,533.30 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.03 of a cent to 73.7 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Lee Ramlakan. She joins us every morning here on Information Radio with our business details. 6:45 a.m. is the time right now. I'm RC Marcusa. Nice shot of the pink sky out there this morning as Winnipeg's waking up. And maybe you're already on your way to work. Quite a lot of vehicles there in our overhead shot here from CBC on Portage Avenue. It's mainly going to be clear today, 18 degrees, but we are going to have a really hot day. It's 18 now. The high today is going to be 30 and the humidex is 34. If you need us on that morning drive, walk or roll, 788-3093 if you want to reach out. Heather Wells is back with next news headlines coming up just before 7 o'clock. So stay with us for that. Right now, a little bit of music to get us there. This is a local artist, Winnipeg's Cece Lopez, who has released a new EP under their R&B label. It's a collection of relaxed tunes, as you can kind of feel already, exploring queer love. This is Cece and Wet Paint.
There's no behind the
I hope you have the day off, because that's the kind of tune where like you're uber chill and having your coffee, and we may not have motivated you to get out the door and get it to work. But man, that was a good tune. That's Wet Paint. That's by Cease, local artist as well, if you want to support local Winnipeg R&B artist. Mainly clear in Winnipeg, and the high, it's 18 degrees, the high today, 30 as we continue to tell you it's going to be hot. Watch for the local smoke out there as well. Coming up on Information Radio after 7 o'clock, we are going to be having a conversation about, more of a conversation, I should say, hearing what some people in Fort Rouge have to say. Some are there are concerned about a homeless encampment. They say that they blame the encampment for making their neighborhood less safe. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that. Heather also has a story in her news this morning, and she'll be joining us just before 7. Speaking of the time, it is 10 to 7 right now, and with the members of Parliament returning to the House of Commons in less than a week, it's shaping up to be a pretty exciting fall session. Since the New Democrats ended the supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals, election speculation has only intensified. In preparation for the return to Parliament, the Liberals, the NDP and the Bloc Québécois are all holding caucus meetings this week. For a closer look at the internal and external pressures facing all the parties, Ryan Tumulty is with us. He's parliamentary reporter with the National Post. Hi, Ryan.
Hi there.
So the Liberal caucus, let's start with them. They meet in Nanaimo, BC. They're at their annual fall retreat this week. What's their focus, their main focus, do you think?
Yeah, so there's sort of two focuses. There's the one they're talking about publicly, which of course is the economy and the cost of living, and delivering for Canadians, as they put it in the press release. And then there's the one that they talk about behind closed doors, which is of course their poll numbers. Like you said, the Conservatives have had this commanding lead in polls for quite some time now. And I think the Liberals are looking at ways to shake that up. I think there's certainly frustration in Liberal ranks that everything they've done over the last year hasn't changed that direction. And so, I think they're going to be talking about, changes to how they communicate, maybe changes to policies, because now that, election seems a lot closer now that the confidence and supply agreement has fallen apart.
What is your sense of how much internal discord is going to be voiced by MPs at this retreat?
Yeah, I mean, on some level, that's the whole point of retreats like this, right? They happen behind closed doors, so MPs can get their time in front of the Prime Minister and really voice their concern and their displeasure about what's happening. So I think there will be a lot of that. So far, only one MP has said publicly that he thinks the Prime Minister should resign, a New Brunswick MP named Wayne Lord. But, certainly there are a lot of MPs who think it's time for a bigger change to cabinet, or it's time for a change to the people around the Prime Minister. I think you'll hear some of that conversation coming up this week, and we'll sort of see where it goes.
National News is covering this morning what happened yesterday. The former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, who's going to be joining the Liberal Party as a special advisor. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of an open secret in Ottawa that Mr. Carney, has aspirations of leading the Liberal Party and, potentially the country as Prime Minister. And so, in that vein, I think one of the criticisms of him among Liberals is that he's never gotten involved. He's never run for office. He's been encouraged to before, but, never really put his name on a ballot or something. So step in that direction, I think this is a nod, getting some skin in the game, as it were. And certainly, from the government's perspective, his credentials are difficult to beat. He was the governor of two central banks, the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, two major economies. He's got all of the credentials that you want for someone talking about economic growth. And so, I think he does bring some experience and some wisdom to the government.
I'm just going to get us to boogie here because I want to get through all the parties. So the Conservatives, this poll, they're way ahead in the polls. What kind of strategy do you think they need to do moving forward?
I think they're going to keep doing what they've been doing, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And they're just going to keep up that pressure, especially on the NDP, because pulling out of the confidence and supply deal was one thing, but what the Conservatives really want to see the NDP do is actually vote against the government.
Yeah, they want them to trigger the election, right? And what about the NDP? What do you think that discussion's going to be like? Their caucus retreat is in Montreal this week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the fact that they're in Montreal is specific. They tend to spend some time during that retreat actually campaigning for the by-election that's there next week. I think that's a really important one for the NDP. They feel like maybe they can get a breakthrough there. And certainly now they have to talk about a different landscape. They have to talk about what it'll be like to bring down the government.
And the Bloc Québécois also meets this week. What's their strategy going into the fall? And there's a lot of talk about now that the supply and confidence agreement has been quashed, whether or not the Liberals could look to the Bloc to prop them up here or there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, the Bloc Québécois have said that they're prepared to negotiate now that the confidence and supply deal is over. And I think, for the Bloc, that's a big change. They came into a minority government sort of hoping, anticipating that they'd have some influence, which they don't typically do because they only run, in Quebec. So I think they thought they would have a significant amount of influence on the government's agenda. With the confidence and supply agreement, took that away from them. But now they do have this ability to hold up the Liberals for specific demands in order to get what they're looking for.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Appreciate your time.
No problem. Take care.
That's Ryan Tumulty, a National Post parliamentary reporter, reached with us this morning to analyze what's happening in Ottawa. Now, we do have a by-election coming up here, and to that end, on Thursday morning, we are live on location in Elmwood, Transcona. So we're going to be at the Elm, which is on Henderson Highway. Look it up, check it out, come have breakfast with us. More importantly, come and listen and ask questions of the candidates, those that are running in the race. CBC has extended invitations to each of the people. There are 6 of them that have their names down to be running in the by-election, that are running rather. And we know that we have confirmed the representative from the Future Party of Canada, the People's Party, the NDP, and the Liberals. We have not yet heard back from the PCs or from the Green Party candidates, but we are certainly hoping that they will round out our coverage and that every candidate will be there as you make your choice, Elmwood Transcona, in this by-election. So that special coverage coming up on Thursday as we get out into the neighborhood for, as I like to call it, our community studios, which is one of my favorite things to do. So looking forward to being with people in Elmwood Transcona. Remember, if you can't make the remote, you can tune in or you can also weigh in. You can always write to us at radio893@cbc.ca. What kinds of things are concerning you in Elmwood Transcona where you live? What things are you considering as you are going to cast your ballot in the upcoming by-election, which is on September 16th. It is exactly 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock, and Heather Walls is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, you are going to be able to pay tribute to the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs in a number of ways this week. Kathy Merrick died suddenly on Friday. The AMC says a candlelight vigil is going to be held tonight outside the Winnipeg courthouse, and that'll be followed by a sunrise ceremony tomorrow morning. Today, a book of condolence is going to be set up at the Manitoba Legislature. You can sign that from noon until 8 tonight. And tomorrow, Merrick will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building from noon until 5 tomorrow afternoon. A woman living in Osborne Village worries about safety around the homeless encampment in Fort Rouge Park. Danelle Huging has lived in that area for 12 years. She says lately she has faced break-ins, loitering, vandalism, and theft, and she blames that encampment. We're going to hear from her in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
18 in Winnipeg, mainly clear, a little bit pink, the sky out there. Now, there is a local smoke warning in effect for most of southern Manitoba. It does include Brandon and Winnipeg. Our high in Winnipeg, 30 with Humidex. It's going to feel like 34. Traffic, pretty good. The commute, no probs. Unless you tell us there is. 788-3093. Call Chloe with your issues. Traffic issues, that is. Although she's pretty kind, she'll probably deal with the other ones too. Well, in the next hour of Information Radio, speaking of the heat, is it prompting you to get in the things that you might not have gotten to this summer? Or are you done with it all? With warmer weather expected throughout the whole week, Jim Agapito hit the street and asked Winnipeggers that question, and some of the answers will surprise you. Stay tuned. That's coming up. In addition, we continue our ongoing coverage looking at the Independent Investigation Unit in this province, the IIU, as calls for an overhaul continue. How trusting of the police watchdog are you? We're having this renewed conversation, after the recent death of a woman who was hit by a Winnipeg police cruiser last week. The IIU will take over that investigation. We had a guest on last week specifically saying that it's about civilian oversight. There needs to be more civilian oversight in the IIU. So today on the show, how much civilian oversight is there, and what does that look like compared to other provinces? We're going to talk to the head of Ontario's, a former head of Ontario's police watchdog, and that province actually has changed a lot of their laws on the books for their police legislation overall. So stay tuned. We'll have that talk in the next hour.
Today on The Current.
Then the one above it is a beaver, then a killer whale, then a frog, then an eagle.
This week, we're bringing you stories from Haida Gwaii in British Columbia. Today, we visit the museum that's bringing home Haida artifacts that had been taken around the world and how that is reviving traditional Haida practices. Coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. All eyes will be on Philadelphia tonight. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will come face-to-face in a televised debate. So far, it is the only scheduled debate between the vice president and the former president, and tens of millions of U.S. voters are expected to watch. The CBC senior Washington correspondent Paul Hunter has more.
Madam Vice President, are you worried about Trump?
As Kamala Harris landed in Philadelphia yesterday ahead of tonight's debate, it was the first question asked. In effect, is she ready for the biggest test of her political career, taking on former President Donald Trump face-to-face on stage as tens of millions of Americans watch from home? Trump has been on the attack against Harris pretty much since the moment she replaced Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee for the White House. As Trump, the Republican nominee, has put it,
if Comrade Kamala Harris gets 4 more years, you will be living a full-blown banana republic.
But Harris is riding a wave of enthusiasm. In many ways, she's already turned this contest around with retorts to Trump well practiced in her rallies.
If you got something to say, say it to my face.
Now's his chance to take her up on that. For the relative fraction of Americans still undecided, the way each candidate answers the questions, the tone they use, the policies they describe could tilt enough opinions to determine the winner of the White House. The race is indeed that close. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Philadelphia.
Emergency officials in Gaza say multiple people have been killed in a designated humanitarian zone. Al-Mawasi camp is now home to an estimated 380,000 people. They were told to go to the coastal strip when they evacuated other communities. Tagrid Abu Asi is asking where she should go. The camp was hit by 4 Israeli missiles overnight. Tents in the area caught fire. Officials initially said more than 40 people were killed, but the Israeli military disputed that. It says it launched a precise attack on a Hamas command center, and it would not have caused so many casualties. The Gaza Health Ministry now says at least 19 people were killed. A Kenyan hospital says the man accused in the death of a Ugandan Olympic athlete has died. Distance runner Rebecca Cheptegei was attacked just over a week ago. Her ex-partner allegedly doused her with gasoline and set her on fire. Cheptegei died days after suffering burns to most of her body. The hospital where the accused was being treated says he died of burns from the attack. More than 1,700 prisoners will be released in the United Kingdom today, and over the next couple of months, that number will reach 5,000. The prisoners are getting out early to free up space for new offenders. As Cameron McIntosh reports, there's concern about the move.
You stand in the middle of the black and yellow box for me.
In London's Pentonville prison, BBC video shows guards handling inmates in crowded cell blocks. Last week, the British prison system set a record. Nearly 89,000 people incarcerated, fewer than 500 vacancies in the men's system. Shay Jury is a prison guard.
It just gets really messy sometimes, and they're quite small space.
I've been shocked by what we've found in the prison system.
So Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is following through on the previous government's plan to grant early release to some prisoners who have completed 40% of a sentence.
We were having to look at how many prison places that we had in order to arrest people who needed to be arrested.
Tougher sentencing, a pandemic backlog in the courts, and lack of new prison space are all part of the problem, as is an expected glut of convictions after riots this summer. High-risk offenders, including those convicted of violent, sexual, and domestic offenses, will be excluded. But there are concerns about public safety. Charlie Taylor is Chief Inspector of Prisons.
Yes, certainly. There is no doubt that some of the people who are coming out are risky.
Others are concerned many inmates will wind up homeless. Sean Williams heads a charity that helps released inmates settle.
And our system isn't set up for that. We've got far too places for people to sleep and be safe.
Her concern, rather than be homeless, many may reoffend. as the Prime Minister promises to increase prison capacity. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, London.
We are not afraid of adverse reaction at this moment because we are more afraid for our life.
This doctor is one of hundreds across India refusing to return to work today. They've been protesting the rape and murder of a female trainee doctor last month. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ordered them to go back to work by Tuesday, but many say they will not return. It's not until it's safe. Another protesting doctor says the threats against healthcare workers are only getting worse.
Because we are protesting, we are getting regular threats. We don't know from whom. I mean, I don't want to name, but we are getting regular threats. So tell me, how can we restart the work if we have such threats coming on regularly upon us?
The doctors are demanding the government install more CCTV cameras inside hospitals and medical schools and add more protections for female staff. The federal NDP is strategizing for the next parliamentary sitting. Less than a week after their leader, Jagmeet Singh, ended his deal with the Liberals, MPs are gathering in Quebec. The NDP is hoping to grow its presence in that province. They're starting by trying to take a seat from the Liberals. David Thurton has more on the upcoming by-election.
Liberals shouting their support for candidate Laura Palestini, campaigning in the by-election in the Montreal riding of LaSalle and Mard-Verdun. It's down to the wire. The vote is next Monday, and the seat has been Liberal as long as anyone can remember. They are trying to hold on. The NDP sees a chance to steal it away. That would be a major upset. And that's partly why New Democrats are holding their strategic planning session in Montreal this week. MPs will be meeting in a hotel to plan for the fall parliamentary sitting. But they're also campaigning, hoping to boost the party's chances in that Montreal by-election. Alexandre Boularice is the NDP deputy leader.
We are cautious, but we are optimistic. In the last days, I was knocking on doors. The answer is really, really good. So everything is possible. It's been a Liberal riding for almost ever, but we have a chance to win this one.
While the NDP is on the offensive in Montreal, they are on the defensive in Winnipeg. A by-election is also taking place in Elmwood, Transcona. And according to one senior party official, they are in a battle with the Conservatives. While the party is confident they can keep the riding, they are not taking anything for granted, saying it's not a safe seat. David Thornton, CBC News, Montreal.
A new report just released this morning says methane emissions around the world are rising. The potent greenhouse gas is the second biggest contributor to global warming after carbon dioxide. Today's report shows most countries are not doing enough to reduce emissions. And as Anayat Singh explains, that includes Canada.
Methane's a climate menace that the world's ignoring.
Rob Jackson at Stanford University is raising a stink about methane.
Emissions from all sources, cows, fossil fuels, landfills, keep going up. And concentrations are rising faster than ever.
That's a problem because methane is way more potent than carbon dioxide at warming the planet. Jackson heads the Global Carbon Project, a group of scientists who released a study today saying methane emissions have jumped 20% over the past 2 decades, and they've continued to rise despite more than 150 countries, Canada included, signing on to global pledges to slash methane by 2030.
The action isn't keeping up with the talk.
Canada's trying to tackle the problem with new regulations to capture methane from decomposing waste in landfills and strict rules about stopping leaks from oil and gas equipment. Tom Green, policy expert at the David Suzuki Foundation, says cutting methane should be a relatively easy climate solution.
And in fact, what it'll mean is less gas will be wasted and emitted into the atmosphere, where it's over 80 times more potent than CO2. And it can actually be put in pipes and be used for heating homes and things like that.
And while the benefits are clear, Green agrees with the report's warning that governments need to act much faster. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
4, 3, 2, 1, ignition.
Blast off in Cape Canaveral, Florida. SpaceX's latest mission finally took off at 5:20 Eastern this morning. 4 civilians are now on their way to space. The Polaris Dawn mission is the first ever commercial spacewalk. It's also expected to be the farthest journey from Earth by anyone since NASA's moon landings more than 50 years ago. The 4 non-professional astronauts will return in less than a week. The SpaceX launch had been delayed several times, but the weather for takeoff was clear enough today. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. Welcome to the show. If you're just getting up and joining us, 7:10 a.m. is the time. This is CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Another hot day ahead in Winnipeg, and we are way above our seasonal norm for this time of year, which is 19 degrees for a daytime high. So stay tuned and we'll get you into it. Speaking of that warm weather, is it making you return to your summer bucket list? Or are you done with it all and ready to put on your sweaters and boots? We hit the street with that question and asked Winnipeggers how they're feeling about it. In addition this hour to more serious stories, some residents in Fort Rouge say a homeless encampment is making their neighborhood less safe. That's the same encampment where a woman died last week. She was hit by a police cruiser. We're going to hear from those residents in this hour of the show. And speaking of the issue that happened with the death of Tammy Bateman, how trusting of the police watchdog are you? We continue our conversations looking at the Independent Investigation Unit this hour. The IIU, that watchdog will take over the investigation for Tammy Bateman's death. But we this hour are going to take you to Ontario. So for many years, we've been looking at the IIU and what reform should look like. In this latest case, we've been hearing guests on the air sharing with us that they feel there needs to be more civilian oversight. So this hour, how much civilian oversight is there involved in our current IIU system, and how does that look in other provinces where they have made some changes? So stay tuned. That is interviews coming up for you about 10 to 8 this morning. Right now, Heather Wells is with us with news headlines. Good morning again.
Good morning. Well, Kathy Merrick, the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building tomorrow. Merrick died suddenly on Friday. The public is invited to pay respects to her between noon and 5 tomorrow afternoon. Starting today, people are also invited to sign a book of condolence at the Manitoba Legislature from noon until 8 o'clock tonight. A lawsuit filed last week alleges the death of a 20-year-old woman at a Manitoba hospital was caused by improper dosing given by medical staff. The woman went to the hospital in Portage la Prairie in 2022 with high levels of acetaminophen in her system. That is a common pain reliever found in Tylenol. The lawsuit says the woman was given an antidote but was given way too much, 66 grams over 12 hours instead of just 4. We'll hear more on that story in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
It is right now 7:12 a.m. It's school day number 6, by the way, Tuesday, September 10th. And Abby's here with your weather.
A warm and breezy day ahead across the province. We're going to be reaching highs near 30 in most of the regions. Local smoke will be developing across board, and we will see clear skies tonight with cooler temperatures. Winnipeg at 18 degrees. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds. That local smoke will be moving in this afternoon. It will be a warm day. Winnipeg is going to get to a high of 30 with a humidex factored in. It's going to feel like 34. In other regions, that thunderstorm for for Thompson has ended, but now that region is seeing shallow fog at 10 degrees. Churchill is at 15, and down south from Brandon all the way down to Morris, we're seeing 13s all the way to 18. And the south will be seeing clear skies and cooling off to around 11 degrees today. So it's just going to be a warm start to Tuesday. We're looking at the mix of sun and clouds. The local smoke moving in the evening, in the afternoon period. And it's going to be breezy and warm with highs near 30.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe Friesen, the commute.
I have had no calls to the commuter line, so hopefully that means things are going rather smoothly. Traffic is picking up outside the window here at Portage and Spence. So if you do spot something, Abby is currently opening the blinds for me. Thank you, Abby. Yes, there are plenty of cars out there. So if you are experiencing something that is getting in your way, slowing you down, and you want to share that with your fellow commuters, you can call us at 204-788-3093.
7:14 a.m. the time right now, and when Winnipegger Danelle Huging's bike went missing, the first place she says she looked was a nearby encampment. For more than a decade, Huging has called Fort Rouge home, neighborhood in Winnipeg here, but she says she feels it's becoming less safe, and she believes the encampment is a reason why. Last week, the Fort Rouge Park encampment was in the news. That was the site where Tammy Bateman died after she was hit by a police car in the park. Huging told CBC's Zubina Ahmed that she heard paramedic sirens the night that Bateman died. But she says the area has become erratic, so to her it sounded like just any other day. Now Huging says that safety in Fort Rouge can no longer be ignored.
It's disheartening, and it feels like it's an issue that it won't go away. Ignoring it doesn't help, but we don't want to live with it and tolerate it. We want our community to thrive, to be a safe place for residents. I guess that's why I'm speaking up, just because I'm concerned about the direction the community is going and the feeling in the neighborhood. Overall, this is part of a bigger problem. It's so much more than safety. I think we've got poverty issues, homelessness issues, access to resources and addiction, resources, mental health. I don't even know where to begin, actually. It's overwhelming.
As someone who's been living here for past 12 years, you did mention there are a lot of issues, safety issues. Any particular massive issues which you've faced in this area?
Directly impacted by these issues, I've had my car broken into twice, my home broken into at least twice, possibly three, one when I was home. Vandalism and loitering and theft of public property, personal property. That's just myself dealing with it. And then I see my neighbors. They're dealing with the same thing. Their cars broken into, vandalism, loitering. We've woken up with people on our steps, and just sleeping or looking in windows. And it doesn't feel safe. It feels very threatening. In the area, you can hear the sirens. I mean, this street, River, is a very busy place for anybody with a siren or red lights. I mean, we see fire paramedic go here several times a day through the area. Police, more police presence, that's good. We've got unmarked cars looking in the area. Again, there's been foot patrols added, but foot patrols are a band-aid solution to a symptom of our bigger issue of the homelessness, of the poverty in that. It's tough. We see people suffering from addictions. Someone will call in, paramedics, fire show up. They look, if the person can move along, they move along, and it's still an issue that is then wandering the community just for somebody else to do a call in. It feels like it's not a great use of our resources. And it also, by day, this park is thriving and great. Families come here, several daycares come here. It's a place we want families to feel welcome. It's a very walkable, livable neighborhood, once voted one of the best neighborhoods in Canada. And it's heartbreaking to kind of see the direction it's been taking lately. It's frustrating having to just tolerate what goes on without knowing what the answer is. But I think we're getting to a point where discussions have to be had from all levels of government, including the community, to address this. It's not just our neighborhood either. It's everywhere.
Have you specifically addressed these issues to the city or to your MLA or?
Yes, directly. I've I started with the 311, City of Winnipeg, sent correspondence to Sherry Rollins, my city councillor, twice. I wrote into my MLA, Wab Canoe, spoke with him directly as well about it at a community barbecue he had in the area, not at this park, at a different one, and acknowledged that it's a concern. But that's it. The solutions, that's the tough part. Talking about needing housing for the homeless. That was one of the responses I got. The park has been very dark. The street has been very dark. Right after the incident, the tragedy that happened here on Tuesday, Wednesday, the streetlights were back on. Coincidence or, tapping shoulders and finally getting response, who knows, but it's good to see that change. It would be great to see a coordinated effort to address the safety concerns, because this is an area that we want to see thrive.
And what about the encampments? Do you think it's safe to have the encampment here as an area resident?
We're all human beings and we need a place. I think that we need to explore better options for this. Maybe sanctioned encampments, perhaps more safe housing, obviously, but maybe curfews in the park, especially parks that are frequented by children. Those measures need to be explored. Other cities have these issues. We're not so unique. What are they doing to help with this? So I think sanctioned camps might be something to explore, and more housing, of course, too. There's some people that choose not to go for housing, right? So that's just a different way of life as well. So we have to find ways to respectfully and with dignity help reintegrate some of the marginalized people into society, and that's with a leg up, versus a handout, I think. And that's housing, access to mental resources, addictions resources, healthcare, all the stuff we all want. I mean, we're a very dense community, and there's a lot of eyes on things, but our eyes have gotten used to living with and tolerating the things that aren't helping our community thrive.
Recognizing across the country how this is playing out, the city of Hamilton has sanctioned encampment sites. Guelph also has a version of this, and for years we've been reporting on Portland that has a large-scale sanctioned homeless camp. That was some of the idea that was coming up there from Danielle Huging. As you heard her say, she addressed her concerns with Fort Rouge, East Fort Garry Councillor Sherry Rowlands as well here in Winnipeg. And in a comment to CBC, Rowlands says that the residents constantly contact her about encampments. She says one of her solutions is to remove encampments in the city to address the housing crisis, and she says she's working toward it. I just want to reread that and make sure this is correct. She says one of her solutions to remove encampments in the city is to address the housing crisis. So it's not to remove the encampments, but it's to address the housing crisis so we don't have to have those encampments. Pardon me, just seeking clarity there. More of this story can be found online at cbc.ca/Manitoba, but obviously we'd love it if you would weigh in. This is the time of year where we start to see change. I know I've heard from people that live by the Redwood Bridge. We've interviewed businesses and people that live down by Waterfront Drive. Often the encampments are centered around Riverside parks and such. So what is your sensibility about what is happening with encampments in our city, and how do you think that we should handle this going forward, especially while we have that huge gap in the availability of affordable housing? If you want to weigh in, 788-3205.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
You know, sometimes you need a lighthearted question, so today we're doing that. A lighthearted noon call-in today between 12:30 and 1. What group do you want to see reunite for a show as reunion concerts become more commonplace? And what was your favorite reunion concert memory? Maybe you've already been out there. People are already up and writing in about the Eurythmics and Supertramp. So if you want to tune in between 12:30 and 1, weigh in with us there. We'll have a live talk. 18 in Winnipeg, mainly clear. Smoke in the air makes the sky almost look pink this morning. And let's turn our attention to how Kathy Merrick's death is being covered across the country. So here in Manitoba and in Winnipeg, of course, the shock at her death, sudden death on Friday. Tributes are continuing to pour in nationally. The Assembly of Manitoba Chief's Grand Chief died suddenly after collapsing. It was at a press conference on the steps of the provincial courthouse. She was, of course, the first woman to be elected Grand Chief. Before that, she served the Pimicik Cree Nation as councillor and also as chief. And I mentioned national attention on this. Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak is the national chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Last night, she was sharing her memories of her friend and longtime colleague on CBC. She was on As It Happens with host Neil Cooksall.
Her heart was for creating a better Canada and speaking out against racism and focusing on issues that relate to First Nations people and trying to find reconciliation through all of that. I know that we hear that word quite often, but you see leaders like her that are really trying, and even though some of the discussions could be very difficult, like when it came to the landfills, for instance, with our women in there, because of her and because of her leadership, all Manitobans will be looked for now. And I think that's a good thing, that we challenge ourselves. Are we doing enough as a society? And I think her teaching and her love for that is, are we doing enough for our society? Are we challenging things that are not right, even in the justice system, even when you don't get the verdict that you want? And my deepest condolences to her family, Todd, their sons, their grandchildren, who she loved so very much. She was doing what had to be done.
What did she tell you about what drove her to keep speaking out, keep fighting?
Oh, her and I, in the office, and this was before I was national chief, I was regional chief of Manitoba. And sometimes I remember, sometimes we didn't even know, what to do. Sometimes issues were so tough, and we would pray, and we would pray together. And I think that that's what drove her. But at the same time, we would speak up about our rights, our treaty rights, the fact that we shouldn't be administering poverty to our own people. She talked about that all the time, that we're administering poverty, and it's such a industry. She also spoke so much about trying to make lives better for children, and her and I shared that in common together, and she'd always stand with me. And I know that, right now we have big issues on child welfare, and I know that she was a supporter of trying to fix that really broken system, as well as for the healthcare systems in Manitoba, that she wanted to change many of that. And I know that we all do. And so I commend her love for her work. And that's what drove her every day, is until things are better in our province and in our country. That's what drove her to work every day.
Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak, the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, speaking last night to Neil Cooksolin as it happened. So the death of Kathy Merrick being covered nationally. The Assembly of Manitoba Chief's Grand Chief died suddenly Friday. A small correction here. Yesterday we've been saying she was 62. She was 63 years old. Coming up in the news at 7:30, we are going to hear more details. We now know when she will lie in state, and also where book and condolence is going to be. So Heather's going to have that for us at 7:30. Right now it's time to turn our attention to morning sports. Scott Reguer is here. Good morning.
Hey there, Marcy.
So let's start with soccer. Not many soccer countries are turning their heads the way Canada's men's team is right now. What are you watching? Tonight they're facing Mexico, right?
Yeah, I'll be watching to see whether they can further establish themselves as the top team in CONCACAF. That is the name for the region encompassing North and Central America as well as the Caribbean. And historically, Marcy, U.S. And Mexico have been CONCACAF's dominant teams. But that is absolutely changing. Over the weekend, Canada beat the U.S. in Kansas City, so on its own soil for the first time in 67 years. And now tonight, they get Mexico in Dallas, where the Canadians have been challenged even before they hit the pitch. Have a listen to this exchange between a Mexican journalist and Canadian coach Jesse Marsh.
And there was an issue with the water. There was a water break that caused the whole hotel to have no water. And I was wondering if that affected in your preparation for today. I see you guys are laughing. So I hope that...
Yeah, because we're sure that the Mexicans turned the water off here. Why do they do that?
Well, I could attest you that as a Mexican, I didn't see no fellow Mexicans messing with the water, sir. But,
yeah, I've heard of the fire alarm. I've never heard turn the water off. So this is a good tap. No, I mean, we're fine. I think we're hopeful the water comes back on, but, it's still a good hair day for Steph, so we're doing
But the mariachis are coming. They're underway for tonight.
Okay.
The Mexican reporter joking about a mariachi band heading to the hotel to interrupt the Canadian team's sleep. In the past, Marcy, hijinks like this have not been a laughing matter. Remember, Canada went close to 40 years without making a World Cup appearance because it couldn't qualify out of CONCACAF, where, especially in Central American countries, soccer is life itself and sportsmanship sometimes an afterthought. Times have changed, though. Getting to co-host its own World Cup in a couple of years, the Canadians under Marsh have been flourishing. And whether they had a chance to shower in their hotel or not last night, I think they should be considered favorites against Mexico this evening. And that's refreshing in its own right. 8 o'clock Central Time kickoff.
What an odd exchange that was that we just listened to. I didn't know if I should be laughing or stressed or, To the other kind of football now, though. A troubling incident involving an NFL star, right?
Yeah. Miami police, Marcy, are investigating their own officers after a member of the Miami Dolphins was dragged out of his car during a traffic stop on Sunday. The incident was recorded on a police body cam.
When we tell you to do something, you do it. You understand? You understand? Not what you want, but what we tell you. You're a little f***ing confused. I'm getting out, bro.
Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill pulled out of his sports car by his arm and head, and then he was forced face first onto the ground. The officers cursed at Hill, but he did not resist their physical force.
I was shocked, man. It was crazy, and me being a father, me being a husband and all that, man, I would just put myself in that situation like, hey, I got to be smart. Man, I'm still kind of shell-shocked from it, man.
That's Tyreek Hill speaking with CNN. He was released on Sunday after that incident, went to his football game against Jacksonville, and promptly scored a touchdown in what ended a Dolphins victory.
Let's end on a much, much lighter note. How are people reacting to the team names announced yesterday for the Professional Women's Hockey League?
Well, as you might expect, Marcy, mixed reactions online. If you missed the American clubs' names, they are the Boston Fleet, Minnesota Frost, and the New York Sirens, while the Canadian clubs are the Montreal Victoire, my personal favorite, the Ottawa Charge, and the Toronto Scepters. A scepter, a decorated...
I can hear what you think of that. Yeah. Okay.
Can you? Yeah. I'm editorializing here.
All right, you're questioning it,
giving you the facts. A scepter is a decorated stick carried by a king or queen as a symbol of authority. I know the Toronto captain, Natalie Spooner, wasn't sure about the name. She says she's come around, so there you go. You can't buy the jersey quite yet. The PWHL says they'll have them on sale probably in October. There is other merch, though, at their official site, so we're all getting ready for the second season. Should be lots of fun.
Well, I know I shouldn't put the opinion on you. I'm not sure about scepters. It's not my favorite one on the list. I kind of like Frost, Charge, Victoire. Yeah, I like that too.
I thought Scepter was a Bond film. Yeah. And then I realized that was Spectre later. But anyway, we're all learning.
Take care. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
Here's CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 18 degrees, and yes, we're heading into another warm one. A mix of sun and clouds, some smoke moving in this afternoon. Today's high is 30, the Humidex 34. We will get some relief in a cooler day tomorrow. Manitobans will be able to pay tribute to the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs in a number of ways, starting today. Kathy Merrick died suddenly on Friday. The AMC is going to hold a candlelight vigil tonight outside the Winnipeg courthouse. That will be followed by a sunrise ceremony tomorrow morning at 6:30. Also today, a book of condolence will be set up at the Manitoba Legislature. You can sign that from noon until 8 o'clock tonight. The book will be given to Merrick's family. And on Wednesday, tomorrow, Merrick will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building from noon until 5 tomorrow afternoon, followed by a wake at RBC Convention Centre. Another wake and Merrick's funeral will be held in her home community of Pimicikamak, or Cross Lake, on Saturday and Sunday. A woman living in Osborne Village worries about safety around the homeless encampment in Fort Rouge Park. Now, that is where Tammy Bateman died after being hit by a Winnipeg police cruiser last week. Danelle Huging has lived in the area for 12 years. She says lately she has faced break-ins, loitering, vandalism, and theft, and Huging blames the encampment.
I've witnessed people with stolen goods walking to the encampment. So farther than judging, I mean, my bike's been stolen. I'll be honest, walking towards the river and along the encampment was the first place I looked for it. I was so mad. But it's also a dangerous thing to get into, too, because of the substance abuse and the mental wellness issues.
At least one other person in the area believes the break-ins are due to lower income housing and gang activity. The city councillor for the area says addressing the housing crisis has to be part of the solution. The Red River X has a plan to redevelop John Bloomberg Sports Complex. CEO Garth Rogerson says it covers all the bases and goalposts and nets and courts. The X wants to lease the city-owned facility in the arm of Headingley and refurbish it for multiple sports. Rogerson says baseball alone won't make this a home run.
Single-use facilities really are not sustainable going forward. It's very difficult to make them work. So the idea is you got to make it multi-use.
The City of Winnipeg says the X is the only organization that has made a proposal, and a decision is expected next year. A lawsuit filed last week alleges the death of a 20-year-old woman at a Manitoba hospital was caused by improper dosing given by medical staff. The woman went to the hospital in Portage-la Prairie in 2022 with high levels of acetaminophen in her system. That is a common pain reliever found in Tylenol. The lawsuit says the woman was given the antidote, but she got way too much, 66 grams over a 12-hour period instead of just 4. The woman's liver function worsened, and she died days later from the effects of fluid on her brain. The lawsuit says the amount of acetaminophen she took before coming to hospital was not enough to have killed her. The woman's family now is seeking damages in her death. CBC News has reached out to Southern Health, which is responsible for the hospital in Portage-la Prairie, but have not yet heard back. Now to Philadelphia and tonight's Kamala Harris-Donald Trump debate.
Stakes higher for Harris because there's more capacity for her to be defined by Trump and to define herself than there is for Trump to do either for himself.
Kathleen Hall Jamieson, a communications and public policy professor at the University of Pennsylvania. The debate will offer American voters perhaps their most detailed look yet at a presidential campaign that has been dramatically reshaped in recent weeks, and it will be the first face-to-face meeting for these two candidates. CBC News Network is going to carry the debate live tonight, starting at 8 o'clock Central Time. You can hear more on that story, as well as more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. It has been 50 years since the first group of 32 women signed up to become RCMP officers. Winnipegger Carol Briggs was among the cadets who made up Troop 17. Those women officers are going to be celebrated at a weekend reunion in Regina. Briggs says breaking into the profession dominated by men wasn't easy. She says they were given men's pants, and when it came to their guns,
they were given purses to put their pistols in, and that didn't work. They'd asked for Sam Browns, just like the men had, and I had one, fortunately, so they had to adjust to that too.
Sam Brown holster. The RCMP says some women experienced gender-based harassment and discrimination on the job. A class action lawsuit settled in 2016 paid out more than $125 million to 2,300 members. You can see more on this story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, since we've been hearing that, clip about the guns and the
pistols
purses,
in the purse,
I was looking up because my mind was bothering me because I thought to myself, I'm trying to remember something that we covered before about police and something similar to the first women police officers in this city. And so I looked it up. And officers in 1975, so a year after that RCMP union you're talking about here in Winnipeg, were issued similar uniforms to men, but instead of boots, and this is an interview I did with an officer, but instead of boots, they were provided with heels.
Wow.
Yeah. So purses and heels were given to you in the 70s if you were a woman getting into law enforcement. We
Things
can't
have
imagine
changed.
this now, right? Yeah. And thank you, because I'm a woman, so every time, right? Thank you to all of those women that came before. 100%. All right, we'll be back with Heather before the top of the clock here. It is 7:36 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. And Abby Adiyemi's in with details on a smoky day, but a hot day too.
Smoky and hot, you'd say. We're going to see temperatures ranging from 23 to 30 in most regions across the province. We will see a mix of sun and clouds, and that local smoke will be rolling in sometime this afternoon. Tonight, we'll see some clear skies and then cooler temperatures. Winnipeg sitting at 18 at this time. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds with that local smoke developing around your lunch period. It will be a breezy day with high near 30, and it's going to feel like 34 with the humidity factored in, and then some clear skies tonight will drop to 12. Brandon is sitting at 13, currently mostly cloudy. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds. Some showers may come back this morning. The risk of thunderstorms will come with that also. Local smoke and breezy conditions later, high near 30 also. Thompson is at 10 with some shallow fog being felt here and there. Mainly sunny day in the forecast today, high 23. Churchill is currently cloudy at 15 degrees. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds today, a slight chance of showers in the forecast, and then the winds will be shifting from light to breezy. We'll see highs around 22. Dauphin is clear at 17 degrees at this time. We're looking at a mix of sun and clouds for today with local smoke developing later this afternoon. Breezier times, high of 28. It's going to feel like 31. And tonight, some clear skies would roll in. You're going to cool down to 8. Good morning to our friends in Gimli. You're currently at 18 degrees at this time. For the Interlake region, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds with local smoke this afternoon. Light winds will develop from the south. We're going to see highs around 30, though it's going to feel warmer around 33. Steinbach is also clear at this time, 18 degrees. Expect a mix of sun and clouds. Local smoke this afternoon, high 30. Morris, clear, 18 degrees. Today's forecast for the Pembina Valley region, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds with local smoke developing in the afternoon. Breezy winds from the south, high 30. And then tonight you cool off to 11. So the forecast for today, another hot one. Expect a mix of sun and clouds with local smoke this afternoon. A breezy day with a high of 30. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at at 18.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And Chloe Friesen's in with our commute.
It's been so quiet on the commuter line, which I hope is good news, but sometimes I say that there's no issues, and then you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, Chloe, there is an issue right in front of me. So I want to hear about that. Let me know what's going on, where you're at. If there's no issues, that's excellent. But if there is something out there that you would like to share with your fellow commuters, you can call our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Chloe. 21 minutes now to 8 o'clock, and next on the show, Abby's been talking about these summer temperatures and reminding us how above normal we are for this time of year. But officially, summer will come to an end in a few weeks. It can bring for people a whole range of emotions. But we do have the cooler temperatures around the corner as well. We know we're going to get there this month at some point. The question is, are you going to welcome that, or are you loving this late heat? CBC's Jim Agapito spoke with some Winnipeggers over at the University of Winnipeg yesterday about how their summer's been.
Martina Cassidus. Too short.
Okay, why do you say too short?
It always feels too short, you know? I feel like it's such a difference between school time and summertime. Like, my schedule went from like being free all the time to having like one afternoon free out of the week, so it's a big difference. It always feels like you need that extra week or two.
Ryan Nash. Absolutely not. It just flew by this year. I don't know. It felt like summer was like a month long. You know, the start of the summer got off to a bad start. I usually garden every summer, and when I went to go get my stuff for the garden, it was like I waited for the rains because it was raining a lot, and then by the time I got there, half the garden centers were closed down already. So I couldn't get half the stuff I usually get. So I got a couple of mealy tomato plants, and that was about it. My peppers didn't grow. That's about it.
Fallon Woodell. Well, it was a hit or miss, honestly. At first, it was just a lot of working, but then it got really hot and humid every day, and I just did not enjoy going outside. And the wasps and everything, so I kind of hid inside for a while and was just working. But I'm excited to be back at school. But overall, summer was all right, but not the best summer ever.
You know, we're having a warm week of summer. How does that make you feel?
Excited, you know, because I can come out in a t-shirt, but also I'm worrying because the hotter it is now, the colder it is in winter. So it's okay. It's just a bit too bright. Can't see anything.
I'll be here a lot, but I'll definitely maybe try to go out for some walks and enjoy the hot weather while we have it, because I know it's fleeting and it's going to go pretty quickly. Winter's coming.
Honestly, I was ready for sweater weather, so I'm kind of sad that it's going to be super hot, but I'm going to try and make the most of it, maybe go on the water bus and just chill at the Forks, honestly, and try and make the most of it during the school week.
I don't know. Summer feels like it's already over for me. I'll probably spend some time outside in the yard. Probably just do a lot of my fall chores and stuff. And that's about it. I'm still fixing up my basement. I had a water leak this summer, so I'm still dealing with that, unfortunately.
Oh, and how did that put a dent into your summer?
It killed it. Yeah, I had a couple of things this year. I had my radiator leaked into my basement, so I spent weeks on it. It's still going, doing an insurance claim and replacing drywall and carpet and ceilings. And then I had an infected wisdom tooth, so that put me on the couch for a week. I think that's why my summer felt short.
Have you contemplated skipping classes because it's so nice outside?
No, because I know myself, and if I skip one, I will skip the rest of the week. And I'm in my final year. I don't want to do that. But it is really nice. Sometimes I think I should just, you know, buy a nice little bottle, go to the beach, and enjoy myself. But I'm not going to do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it always crosses your mind. I definitely know some friends that asked me, hey, do you want to maybe go to the beach or something? Like, get together. It's so hard to, like, coordinate now because we're all busy. So skipping school or calling in sick for work definitely was an option.
Definitely have the urge to go home and honestly just go on the water bus and just chill for the rest of the day. That is what I want to do right now. Kind of sucks. I have a 3-hour lecture ahead of me, so I'm not very excited to see the beautiful outdoors while I'm sitting inside for 3 hours straight, but hopefully it goes by fast.
I mean, some days I'd want to go outside and, like, chill, but it's a bit too hot or whatever. And I guess when it's all hot and sticky, I can't really do much. My fan broke, my AC broke, so trying to survive with that.
How do you deal with that?
I don't. I just try and sleep it off, or I have a little hand fan and I start fanning myself real hard. I remind myself that winter is coming soon, so I shouldn't shell out money for a new fan. And yeah. And some days it rains and there's a little bit of breeze, so you know it's a little bit of reprieve.
Are you ready for fall then?
Yes, I love pumpkin spice. I am basic in that way, but I love my pumpkin spice, so I'm very excited. I'm done with the heat.
I'd say so. Like, I love summer, but also like I'm sad that summer's leaving, but I'm kind of excited for like the fall colors and the fun stuff that fall has to bring.
And why didn't you get enough of summer?
So I don't live here. I live in the UK, so I kind of spend my time being in between two places. And so you get summer, spend a bit of time with family, and you already have to leave. I went from like real cold, windy rain to real hot.
So how are you feeling about this week's warm weather and how you're planning to spend the rest of your summer? You can always weigh in with us. That was CBC's Jim Agapito out talking to some students over at the University of Winnipeg yesterday.
One hospital uses celebrities.
We've changed how the world treats brain tumors, sickle cell, and leukemia.
Another uses stories.
I was just so happy to be better and cancer-free.
And then Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital threw away the rule book.
We undeniable.
Medicine and Miracles, the power of hospital marketing on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Still ahead on Information Radio after 8.
Every morning we have to go get the breakfast. We're allowed to every morning. Every morning we come here.
Yeah. And do you look forward to that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you feel when you get a good breakfast when you're going to start your day at school?
Good.
The provincial government has promised meal programs in all 690 public schools in Manitoba this fall. Those are some of the students at Nijimakwa School in Winnipeg. We're going to take you there after 8 o'clock. We're going to hear more about what the impact is on the students. And we're also going to meet Miss Barbara, who's been making food for students at that school for some 32 years. And more than that, she also helps kids in the neighborhood. So those stories are coming up after 8 o'clock on our show. Time right now is 7:46 a.m. And we have a bit of music this morning from an artist called I out of Toronto, a folk singer. It's their 4th studio album. And this is the first single. It's called My People.
All rise, despite how they divide, when we unite, with our backs to the shadow, when we walk through the battle, marching till the light falls. This is what we're made for. Till morning, stay strong, my brave souls. Can we carry on with our backs to the shadow? And we don't see the battle, marching till the light falls. This is why we sing. My people, the restless, unequal. We pray for the day we shine good on the evil. Down, down, they can't keep us. Down, down, they can't keep us. Down, down, they can't keep us. Lord, this is for my people. For my people, fear us, cause we're fearless. Get louder, they don't hear us. With our backs to the shadow, when we walk through the battle, marching till the light falls. This is what we're made for. My people, the restless, unequal. We pray for the day we shine good on the evil. Down, down, they can't keep us. Down, down, they can't keep us. Down, down, they can't keep us. Lord, this is for my people.
No, I got that in my future all day long on my playlist. This is an artist called I out of Toronto. As I mentioned, the 4th studio album from the artist. Tune's called My People. That was the first single, so you can check it out. It is 12 minutes to 8 o'clock right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and up next on the show, we continue our coverage this morning about concerns with Manitoba's Independent Investigation Unit, or the IIU. The province confirms that of the 8 senior investigators, 4 are civilians. The others are former police officers. But is that enough civilian oversight? The Independent Investigation Unit investigates all serious incidents involving police officers in this province, whether occurring on or off duty. The recent death of Tammy Bateman, a woman who was hit by a Winnipeg police cruiser near an embankment last Monday, has renewed calls for the IIU to be overhauled. Now, included in those calls for change is Indigenous advocate and freelance writer Nicole Murdoch. She was on the show last week. She says the IIU needs more civilians. especially, she says, those who are Indigenous. Here's what she had to say.
How effective is it to have police investigating police? When it comes to oversight, when it comes to accountability, how does that play out in the system as it exists today? Ideally, we wouldn't have a need for oversight, but I do believe we always will within these systems that we're currently operating in. And regardless of how many bodies are represented on the IIU as investigators that are Indigenous, I do think the Indigenous principles and practices of accountability, of community safety, of looking out for one another and taking responsibility for our actions become focal to the IIU.
Howard Morton is our guest in our Encoring coverage this morning and joins us via Zoom. He is a criminal defense lawyer in Ontario. In the 1990s, he was the director of the Special Investigations Unit there. That is Ontario's police watchdog. And he said he prioritized hiring civilians. Good morning.
Good day.
So as you heard me say earlier, in Manitoba, 4 out of 8 senior investigators in the IIU are civilian. That is the latest numbers that the province has provided CBC. I don't think the average one of us person has context for whether or not that's enough. What's your response when you hear that number?
I'm not sure you can reduce it to a mathematic fraction at all. I fully understand the desire to have a fully independent or almost fully independent investigative body that is made up of entirely of civilians. I appreciate that. I understand it. There is a major difficulty with that, though. If somebody is killed and the SIU is assigned because an officer was engaged in executing a duty, then the investigation is a homicide investigation. And you don't learn how to investigate homicides by being with some non-criminal investigative body, which is where many of the civilians, at least in Ontario, come from. Homicide investigations are extremely difficult. And I may well be in a minority of this view, but it's always been my view, yes, have as many civilians as you can, because the perception is extremely important, but do not risk the ability to conduct thorough homicide or serious injury investigations. And the only ones who have the training and experience to do that are former police officers. So my view is you've always got to have a core of former experienced police officers, now retired. And I understand once a cop, always a cop, that sort of thinking. I do understand that. But at the same time, to deprive the unit of that investigative ability, I think would be really destructive of their ability to carry out a thorough investigation.
I want to ask you something about the parallels in Manitoba and Ontario that's a concern. I understand it's something that you also raise as a concern. Officers do not have to provide an interview. How does that impact an investigation? Can you outline your concerns about that?
Yeah, let me say I'm probably in a minority on this point as well. The issue is whether or not a subject officer, and you have the same definitions in Manitoba. A subject officer is someone who is being investigated. All the other officers who may be helpful to the investigation are defined as witness officers. Witness officers must be interviewed by SIU. They have a duty to be interviewed and provide their notes. The law in Ontario right now, and I believe in Manitoba, is that subject officers, because they are the subject of a criminal investigation, they have the same right against self-incrimination as you and I do. My view is that's not the case when it comes to investigating the police. The police are public servants. They're there to serve and protect. Police officers have extraordinary powers and they carry guns. And in my view, whenever there is a fatality or a serious injury, the public has the full right to understand what happened. And the best person to tell the SIU what happened is a subject officer who was one way or another involved in the death or the serious injury. So that raises the charter issue. People will say, are you saying they don't have the same charter rights that you and I have? And I am. My view is that Section 1 of the Charter, which provides exception to all charter rights, provides that any law which is demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society is exempt from any charter right, including the right against self-incrimination. And I think if this matter went to court, the better argument is that Section 1 of the Charter overrides the charter right against self-incrimination, and the officer must speak. But at present, the law in Ontario is that subject officers neither have to be interviewed nor provide their notes.
And just for people just joining us, the SIU is in Ontario, the version of the IIU here. So it's just a different acronym, obviously, but we do share some parallels here. So if that's a change that you think, in your view, could be made that would strengthen investigation, if you hear from that direct officer involved, not just by the witness officers, but you also are saying that you have to have some former police officers. This is an investigation, in some cases a murder investigation, homicide investigation, but then some civilians. What's the way forward to, in your view, to ensure trust in police? One of the ideas talked about here was having a parallel, and in Manitoba's case, a parallel Indigenous board of sorts or group of sorts that would directly advise or be involved parallel to what the IIU would be. Could something like that strengthen trust and help us with better outcomes in investigation?
Absolutely. The Ontario SIU does have a specialized program with respect to cases emerging from a First Nations, Inuit, or otherwise community. And they're involved in any investigation involving a person from one of those communities. And it seems rather obvious to me that is a good idea. You get a certain amount of expertise that you and I certainly wouldn't have from people who are engaged in those communities.
I'm just curious if you share any of the distrust or the lack of faith as a former, officer that headed up a unit that's similar to the IIU here.
The difficulty is this. Whenever somebody is, let's take a homicide, a person is killed, shot to death by police officers. Like every other criminal case, the victim's family almost always believes there should be some sort of charge coming out of that. So I certainly understand the concern expressed not only by those families, but by their communities whenever the SIU completes an investigation and there are no charges. And as you're probably aware, that I think of about 3,500 investigations with the SIU, there have only been 95 charges, I believe. And
those numbers are similar in Manitoba. I just want listeners to know. Very low number compared to the number of cases. Yeah.
So I fully understand the disappointment, and I must admit I've been engaged in a couple of cases myself, acting for victims' families, where it certainly seemed to me there was sufficient evidence to charge an officer, at least with criminal negligence causing death. So I'm not suggesting there was evidence to charge murder or manslaughter, but I think there was a degree of negligence which warranted a criminal charge. But you have to do that. You have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. So obviously I'm influenced by the fact that I act for the family, and I view the evidence both as a former prosecutor for 20 years and as now a defense lawyer, and form the view that, my goodness, there should have been a charge here. But I could be completely wrong. I'm sure you'd find 20 or 30 other lawyers to say there's no way there should have been a criminal charge there.
Mr. Morton, we will have to continue this conversation another time because that transparency piece is also obviously a big part of this. But we really appreciate your perspective today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Via
Have a good
Zoom. You as well. Via Zoom. Howard Morton, former director of the Special Investigations Unit, which is Ontario's police watchdog, weighing in on some changes he says may benefit the SIU and perhaps, by extension, our conversation, of course, about the IIU in Manitoba. For the latest news headlines, please go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Still ahead, we'll learn more about the Universal Proof Food program that's coming in to Manitoba. Stay with us.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Jan Martel's smash hit novel Life of Pi has been transformed into a play. Tom will talk to Jan about the inspirations that led to Life of Pi all those years ago and why you might want to be a little less reasonable.
I wasn't feeling life, I was just sort of observing it sourly, and that's no way to live.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
This week, we're bringing you stories from Haida Gwaii in British Columbia. Today, we visit the museum that's bringing home Haida artifacts that have been taken around the world and how that is reviving traditional Haida practices. Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We begin in Gaza, where a designated humanitarian zone is now the site of an attack. Overnight, Israel's military launched airstrikes on al-Mawasi displacement camp. It says it was targeting a Hamas command center. Palestinian officials say multiple tents caught fire with people inside. Sasha Petrusik brings us the details from Jerusalem.
Allahu Akbar! The sound of grieving spreads across southern Gaza this morning amid what's left of a humanitarian zone set ablaze overnight. Singed and shredded tents, blood-stained sand, craters 9 meters deep. We were asleep when 5 or 6 missiles slammed into the houses and tents, says Ola Al-Sher. Al-Mawasi refugee camp is squeezed along the Mediterranean coast. Its residents directed to move into this designated safe zone by Israeli forces. Emergency responders in Gaza initially said 40 Palestinians were killed. Health officials now confirm 19 dead, but warn that number could rise. Israel's military disputes high casualties, saying the precise munitions it used wouldn't have caused such numbers. It says it was targeting a Hamas command post embedded there, led by senior commanders directly responsible for the October 7th attacks on Israeli civilians. This morning, as bodies arrive at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, survivors ask, where is safe to go? They said go to Al-Mawasi, Tagreed Abu Asi cries, but when we went, they hit us. Where now? Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
For the first time, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will go toe-to-toe in front of American voters. The two presidential nominees will take the stage in a 90-minute debate tonight. It is shaping up to be a critical moment in the U.S. election. The CBC's Caroline Bargout joins me now from Washington. And Caroline, what's at stake here?
There is so much at stake, and this is really U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris's time to define herself in front of the American public. Now, she and former President Donald Trump are neck and neck in the polls. The latest New York Times Siena poll has Trump actually inching ahead of her in the lead. He sits at 48%. She slipped to 47%. Now, 30% of the people who were surveyed said they didn't know much about Harris and that they needed to know more. So this is really her chance to show the public that she has what it takes to be president. Now, Trump's team has been trying to define her as weak and progressive, and this is what Harris expects he's going to do in tonight's debate. This is what she said on a U.S. morning show yesterday.
He plays from this really old and tired playbook, right, where there's no floor for him in terms of how low he will go.
You know, I'm pretty sure that Trump's people are going to try to keep him on topic and keep him away from taking personal shots at her or talking about her race or gender.
What are the big issues that could ignite tonight's debate?
Well, the biggest issue for American voters is the economy. So we expect that is going to be front and center tonight. Now, Trump has said that he's going to cut taxes and raise tariffs on imported goods, while Harris plans to provide tax relief for small businesses. She also says that she plans to raise taxes on people making more than $400,000 a year. The border is going to be another major issue, which Trump is going to try to pin on Harris as she's part of the Biden-Harris administration. And then we also know that abortion rights is going to be a huge issue, which Harris really leads. And she's been very strong in her support for women's rights to choose, whereas Trump has been a little unclear lately as where he stands.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
The CBC's Caroline Bargut in Washington. Hundreds of doctors across India are defying the Supreme Court's order to return to work. They have been protesting the rape and murder of a trainee doctor last month. The doctors are demanding better, safer working conditions. The CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more.
Justice! Justice! It's been weeks of protest chants for these junior doctors. Livid that one of their own, a 31-year-old trainee doctor at a hospital in Kolkata in Western India, was raped and murdered while on duty last month. The state's junior doctors went on strike, trying to force public hospitals to implement better safety measures. But India's Supreme Court has now ordered them back to work. In a ruling that underlines a doctor's responsibility to the people they serve, lawyer Rohit Pandey explains. The court says if the doctors don't return to work by Tuesday evening, they could face disciplinary measures. But that threat means nothing to trainee doctor Kushi Tuki.
We are not afraid of adverse reaction at this moment because we are more afraid for our life.
Other doctors outside the Kolkata hospital where the attack took place say they won't stop until they see change.
Our patience is dwindling, but still the fire to fight back.
Even if they're skeptical, says Dr. Ria Bera.
They have assured us reforms like putting up CCTV cameras or better resting places for female doctors, which we actually lack.
She hasn't seen any extra security cameras, despite India's top court also pressuring the state government to monitor what hospitals are doing to keep their doctors safe. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Australia's government is vowing to introduce new laws to place a minimum age on social media access. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced his government will roll out a trial age verification technology. Children would be banned from opening social media accounts. The exact age limit and the parameters have not been set, but officials say the line would be drawn between the ages of 14 and 16. Parents across Australia have been increasing calls for more online protections for children. Federal Liberals are trying to flip the script at their caucus retreat in Nanaimo, BC. Some party insiders have resigned and some MPs have been speaking up about an uncertain future. The Liberals are taking steps to look at strong economic reform, and they are bringing in a big name. Catherine Cullen is in Nanaimo with the latest.
Well, there's nothing like the threat of an election to focus the mind, right?
Caucus Chair Brenda Shanahan says there's a lot for the Liberals to sort out as they meet in British Columbia. Their deal with the NDP is dead, meaning an election could come at any time. In a bid to boost their economic bona fides, the Liberals are seeking help. Former Bank of Canada and Bank of England Governor Mark Carney. Shanahan is enthused.
I've read his book and certainly followed his career. This is someone with a very impressive professional background.
But the Conservatives, including House Leader Andrew Scheer, say it doesn't change the fact so many Canadians are struggling.
It doesn't matter what kind of paint they slap on the Liberal brand or who they're speculating might lead them into the next election. Liberal policies, 9 years of Liberal policies have done this.
Carney will address Liberal MPs today and attempt to put the spotlight back on the economy and off of questions about the Liberals' own political fate. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Nanaimo, British Columbia.
Сегодня мы выдвигаемся на фронт.
That is a scene from the controversial documentary Russians at War. The press and industry screening at the Toronto International Film Festival is going ahead today. The film shows the war in Ukraine from the perspective of Russian soldiers, but Ukrainian officials call it propaganda. Michelle Song has more.
This film aims to whitewash the crimes of Russian soldiers.
Oleh Nikolenko is the Consul General for Ukraine in Toronto. He says the Toronto International Film Festival has failed to address concerns over the documentary Russians at War.
Again, we really don't understand whether the festival is really cognizant of the gravity of the situation. And
Nikolenko says the film is Russian propaganda and will be joining members of the Ukrainian Canadian community to protest its initial screening. In a statement to CBC, the film's director, Anastasia Trofimova, denies those accusations. She joined a Russian battalion for 7 months on the front lines, characterizing the soldiers as ordinary guys. Ihor Michael Chizin is the national director of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. He says Trofimova is biased.
Concerned. Her background should obviously be a concern for people in terms of her previous employer being RT.
Russia Today, also known as RT, is the international arm of the Russian state-controlled television. More recently, Trofimova worked for Radio-Canada's Moscow bureau. That is before the Russian government closed it in 2022. Trofimova insists her movie is an anti-war film, but Nikolenko argues it's misrepresenting the realities his fellow Ukrainians are facing. Michelle Song, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for spending some time with us in the morning show today. This is Information Radio on CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. And this half hour on the show, educators have long known it is a huge challenge for students to try to learn when their stomachs are growling. Today, in our last half hour, we're going to take you over to Nijimakwa School in Winnipeg to get a sense of the impact of the enhanced meal program there this fall. As we meet one of the people that's making lunches there for the students for some 32 years. And she's pretty excited about this. So stay tuned. We'll hear from her, from some students. We're also going to hear from the Director of Nutrition for the largest school division in the province, the Winnipeg School Division, about what comes next. Stay tuned. Heather Wells is here now with our news headlines otherwise. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, Cathy Merrick, the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building tomorrow. Merrick died suddenly on Friday. The public is invited to pay respects to her between noon and 5 tomorrow afternoon at the Manitoba Legislative Building. And today, people are invited to sign a book of condolence at the legislature from noon until 8 tonight, and that book will be given to Cathy Merrick's family. The first group of female police officers to join the RCMP 50 years ago will be celebrated this weekend at a reunion in Regina. Winnipegger Carol Briggs was part of the class of cadets known as Troop 17. We're going to hear her experiences coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, Adiyemi, we were just watching the kids, some of the little ones walking to school. You can see them swinging their bags on Portage Avenue, and a lot of people are layered up right now. I guess later they're going to hopefully have to have shorts under there.
Yeah, surely, because it's going to be another warm day. It's going to be another steamy day. We're currently still at 18 in the city, and that's where we are right now. Today, we should be seeing a mix of sun and clouds, a warm afternoon, a little bit of smoke in the air expected this afternoon as well. It will be breezy. Temperatures will be getting to 30, even feeling warmer than that. And other regions, Thompson still seeing that shallow fog at 12, Churchill at 15, and down south we're seeing 15 all the way down to 19 between Gimli and Morris. It's the sun trying to make its appearance for Duffin at this time. I'll just say we're headed to another warm day, a mix of sun and clouds. Some smoke will be coming in the afternoon, and we'll see highs near 30 for most of the regions today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
We're pitching a no-hitter in traffic. Any calls, Chloe?
No calls on this
right.
Tuesday morning. So, I mean, that's a great sign for the commute. So if there is something, however, that is getting in your way, you still do have time to call our commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned this morning, we're going to look at the impact that this additional funding from the federal and provincial governments is going to have on students in Manitoba this fall when it comes to the meal program. The federal Liberals are spending $1 billion over 5 years to help with school nutrition across the country, and the NDP government in Manitoba has added $1.3 million to existing grants, and they're promising meal programs now in all 690 public schools in Manitoba in what they're calling a universal program. That means big changes for some of the smallest people, like these grade 3 students that I met on Friday. What school are we at?
Manitobans.
Awesome. And what's this room? What happens in here?
The lunchroom.
Okay. So what kinds of things do you like to eat for lunch?
Sandwiches. Ham sandwiches, no ham. Right now we're eating yogurt and apples and with some sandwiches.
Got it. Yogurt, apple sandwiches. That sound that's in the background, that buzzing that we can hear, they're building like a new space for different foods.
Can I taste something?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
Every morning we have to go get the breakfast. We're allowed to every morning. Yeah. Every morning we come here.
Yeah. And do you look forward to that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you feel when you get a good breakfast when you're going to start your day at school?
Good.
Those grade 3 students are part of a population of 310 kids from nursery to grade 8 at Nijimakwa School, which is on Flora Avenue in Winnipeg's North End. Now, right now, all of the students at that school use the breakfast program, and about 30% of them also return for emergency lunches. The person prepping the food is Barbara Desmaris. The kids call her Miss Barbara. She wears this half apron. She's got this shock of white hair. She's got a big smiling face. I spoke with her briefly as well in the school's food lab right next to the humming freezers full of yogurt and milk for cereal. And as you're about to hear, this is more than just her job. How long have you been feeding kids here at Nijimakwa?
32 years. This is my 32nd year.
What motivates you to do that?
Well, you walk around the North End, you see a lot of hungry kids, so that's just what it is.
We're cutting an apple. I don't want to waste the food. So while we're talking, maybe you can show me how we're supposed to be cutting this for the kids.
Cut them this way.
Got it.
Then I cut the core out because most of them don't want the core. So I rush in the morning for an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they come and get the breakfast at 9:30.
Yeah. You're going to be getting some help, and there's going to be some more food. There's new funding. That's why we're here at Nijimakwa.
The kids will be happy. I know that every time they see me, because they think I'm the one purchasing the food, but it's not. And I tell them it's not me.
Sometimes it's you, though. I understand even when you're in the neighborhood, you actually...
Yeah, I do. I'll go to cash and carry. If they have stuff on sale, I'll buy it, and I distribute it among whoever kids I see.
How? Like, where do you keep it?
My car at home, because I could walk down the street. Guarantee you somebody will say hi to me.
Yeah.
Or even if I go shopping at a store, there's always a kid that will recognize me.
We're needing to finish cutting the apple because Miss Barbara's about to have a whole bunch of kids come in here, I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so for radio listeners here, we're surrounded by tables. There's a stove in here and there's different places for kids to sit and such. And we're about to learn about the renovation that's going to be going on because everything's about to change.
Yes, I'm getting a new kitchen, 2 industrial stoves, and I'm pretty excited about it.
What's the first thing you want to make on the stove? You're going to be able to be cooking in a different way for the kids.
Oh, the kids, their favorite is that macaroni with I use taco meat with macaroni and tomatoes, and I bake it with cheese on it. They could eat it every day if I make it every day.
What do you call it?
Taco bake.
I like it. Miss Barbara's taco bake. All right, you want to finish doing this?
See, this would have been one piece. Cut them this way.
So the impact of the Universal School Food Program will be felt greatly in the Winnipeg School Division, which is the city's largest. Catherine Armstrong is the Director of Nutrition for the division, and she and Nijimakwa Principal Ruben Boulette also spent some time with us in the food lab to talk about the changes this fall.
Before this fall, we had a breakfast program, and we'd offer snacks and emergency lunches. But after this new funding, we're going to be able to offer a variety of meals, hot and cold. We're going to have a lot of choice for the children, and it's going to be really exciting. It's essentially like opening a restaurant here in our school. It's a completely new room, so new cooking spaces, new tables, new stoves, everything we need in order to get this endeavor going.
What does the need look like overall in the Winnipeg School Division, Catherine?
The need in the Winnipeg School Division is varied. Every school has some need, and some schools have a lot of need, and it's really determined by students coming to us and talking to us about what they are feeling at the time, but also families coming to us and talking to us.
How many schools are there in the Winnipeg School Division?
We have just under 80 schools, so we have both our brick and mortar schools, and we also have some services that work interdivisionally, so just under 80 with some programs sprinkled throughout.
Got it. Now, I understand already from the way this has been rolling out that it's really individual schools that are going to figure out what they need to do with this funding to a certain extent. So there'll be food available in every school, but some schools are enhancing programs and other schools will have brand new ones, right?
Absolutely. We have to acknowledge that our schools, our administrators and the staff within our schools have been doing this work for years. Some of these programs have been done in volunteer time. A lot of it has been done through grant funds. So what we're trying to do is consult with our schools, with our administrators, and with the people who've been putting these programs together to find out what they have and where they'd like to go with it.
We're being careful not to have all the kids on camera, but they're so cute. They're behind us. Hi! Hi! I hope you can hear their little hellos. They're picking up sandwiches behind us. What is it like for you as a principal, as an educator, Ruben, when you know a kid is hungry, a student's hungry?
Well, my first reaction when I know they're hungry is just to feed them. Like, that's our job, is to support them support their learning while they're here in the school. And this is one way that we can get them at the table, and one less thing for their parents to worry about, so they can just focus on their learning.
How have you seen the needs change and maybe even grow given the state of the economy?
Listening to our parents and our community, there is a need right now for food sovereignty with rising food prices, and we're more than happy to take that off parents' place. We're telling parents now, just bring them here, we'll feed them, and we just want them to learn and be happy here.
Now, the meals that you're going to provide, we did get a peek inside that newly renovated space that's underway right now, and on the wall there's an existing mural, and it nods to traditional foods. Will the menu at Nijimakwa keep that in mind?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at what traditional foods we can incorporate into all of our meal planning. That includes some of the wild meats, and how not only can they be eating and accessing these foods, but learning about what they mean to us as Indigenous people.
How excited were you then when you found out that this was going to be something that was going to be in place?
It was heartwarming, heart-melting even, because as somebody who grew up in this neighborhood, growing up there was, in my own family, food sovereignty concerns, and now I'm happy to say that this is a service we offer our community and our students, and I'm excited to see how this is really going to turn out by the end of the year.
This funding, Catherine, I just want to dig into a little bit here. Part of this is it's going to be annual funding, and it really is brand new, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's always been monies allocated to nutrition supports throughout the Winnipeg School Division, but it was a mixture of our own divisional funds, of school funds that administrators set aside, and of grants that administrators or staff within their schools applied for. This is really transformative in terms of what we're able to offer and how many students we're able to serve.
Now, there are still some supplements, because some of, I understand, the equipment here at Nijimakwa, for example, is being helped by, I think is it the Schroeder Foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The Schroeder Foundation has been an incredibly generous donor to Winnipeg School Division programs. Their origins are here right in the North End, and it's been really important for them to give back to the community that formed them, but they've gone beyond that and have looked at really ensuring that we have the tools that we need to run programs that offer whole meals to students, and they love seeing the outcomes of it, of happy students just ready to learn.
Even though this is all good news, what concerns you both as Manitobans about, just child hunger in this province?
Manitoba is an unfortunate leader in child poverty, and the Winnipeg School Division covers many of the communities that are hardest hit by that. So one of the first ways that we know that this is affecting our student population is hunger. I I have concerns around the longevity of programs like this. We really want to ensure that we're building rigorous, sustainable programs, and that takes time. So we want to ensure that we're engaging deeply with our administrators, engaging deeply with our community members to find out what's meaningful for them, so that when we're building a program, we know that it's going to stand the test of time.
And how about you, Ruben, especially as an educator?
Right now, I'm really hopeful because this is one of those solutions, and it can really go a long way.
Well, here's to Barbara's Taco Bake, I think she called it.
It's amazing.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Catherine Armstrong, Director of Nutrition for the Winnipeg School Division, and Nijimakwa Principal Ruben Boulette in conversation with me in their school cafeteria. Food lab is what they call it over at the school last week. If you want to weigh in on how your food program is going to be changed this fall or enhanced or improved because of this additional funding that's coming, you can always let us know and maybe we'll visit your school. 788-3205.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world, staying on top of stories around the globe, and connected close to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
On our noon call-in today, between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, nostalgia tours. They're all the rage, people. What group do you want to reunite for a show, or what's your favorite reunion concert memory? If you can't be there live, call us now, 788-3797. We'll get your story on air as we listen to Mr. Tom Cochrane.
Looks like a road that you travel on when there's one day here and the next day gone. Sometimes you bend, sometimes you stand, sometimes you turn your back to the wind. There's a world outside the darkened door where blues won't haunt you anymore. With a brave heart, free lover's soul, come ride with me to the distant shore. We won't hesitate, break down the garden gate. There's not much time left today. Life is a highway, I wanna ride it all night long. If you're going my way, I wanna drive it all night long. Through all these cities and all these towns, it's in my blood and it's all around. I loved you now like I loved you then. This is the road and these are the hills. From Mozambique to those Memphis nights, the Khyber Pass to Vancouver's lights. Knock me down and back up again. You're in my blood, I'm not a lonely man. There's no load I can't hold. The road's so rough, this I know. I'll be there when the light comes in. Just tell them we're survivors. Life is a highway, I wanna ride it all night long. If you're going my way, I wanna drive it all night long. Life is a highway, I wanna ride it all night long. Give me, yeah. You're going my way, I wanna drive it all night long. There was a distance between you and I, a misunderstanding once, but now we look it in the eye. There ain't no load that I can't hold. Road so rough, this I know. I'll be there when the light comes in. Just tell them we're survivors. Life is a highway, I wanna ride it all night long.
Well, maybe you were there when Tom Cochrane played the Burt Block Party this summer. I know I was. A lot of people enjoying what is being called a nostalgia tour of sorts. They're becoming a trend in music, and it's not just for those of us that are in Gen X. This was my grad song, Life is a Highway. But it is also time for millennials to get a little nostalgic. Avril Lavigne, in the midst of a greatest hits run, celebrating her 2000s material. If you flip back and forth through a different generation, Paula Abdul was on CBC this week. She's hitting the road across Canada. So what is it about these nostalgia tours? Who have you seen? What did you love? And also, who would you like to see get back together for a nostalgia tour? We're going to have a fun conversation on our noon call-in. 788-3797. If you want to leave your concert memory now with us, please do that on the noon listener line. Or you can join me this afternoon between 12:30 and 1. Kevin Donnelly is going to be our guest, just talking about the concerts that have come through Winnipeg. In Winnipeg, sunny, 18 degrees, and a high today of 30 degrees with Humidex going to feel like 34. As Abby's been warning us here, it's going to be a smoky day in Winnipeg. So that haze in the air, that kind of odd color, you can always see it before you smell it, but it'll affect you a little. That's happening across Winnipeg. There's also local smoke in Brandon's forecast today as well, where it's going to be hot again too. A high of 30 in Brandon with Humidex 33. Up north in Thompson, mainly sunny today. Your high is 23 with Humidex 27, and there's no warning of smoke up north this morning, mostly in the southern part of the province. Well, tonight there is special coverage of the U.S. presidential debate. Interesting that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have actually never really met face-to-face, she was sharing in a previous interview. But tonight, join CBC News chief correspondent Adrian Arsenault for the simulcast of the ABC News presidential debate in Philadelphia between Harris and Trump. So our pre-debate coverage begins at 7:30 local time. Obviously, lots of interest in what's happening in this election in the United States, and that will lead right into a special edition of The National. So 7:30 is Winnipeg time here. Obviously, it's going to be 8:30 Eastern, so you can check it out tonight on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. As mentioned, we want to thank everybody in advance of the news here coming up who has been in our program this morning, I should mention rather. Thanks to our guests, thanks to all of our hardworking people in unit, our current affairs associate producers, and our leaders in unit, Leif Larson and Nellie Gonzalez. A few more thank yous as we wrap up the show, but right now it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, 18 degrees. We are going to heat up again, a steamy high of 30. A little bit of smoke moving in this afternoon as well. And you do get a break from the heat tomorrow. A little bit cooler in Winnipeg tomorrow. Cathy Merrick, the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building tomorrow. Merrick died suddenly on Friday. Today, a book of condolence will be set up at the Manitoba Legislature, and you can sign it from noon until 8 tonight. The book will then be given to Merrick's family. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs says a candlelight vigil will be held tonight outside the Winnipeg Courthouse. That will be followed tomorrow morning by a sunrise ceremony at 6:30. And Wednesday, Merrick will lie in state at the Legislative Building from noon until 5 in the afternoon, followed by a wake at RBC Convention Centre. Another wake and Merrick's funeral will be held in her home community of Pimicikamak on Saturday and Sunday. Flags have been lowered at the legislature until Merrick's funeral on Saturday. Some people in Osborne Village say they're worried about safety near Fort Rouge Park. One, Danelle Huging, says she's seen break-ins, vandalism, and theft. Huging believes it is being mostly caused by people living in an encampment at the park. That is the same park where a woman died after being hit by a Winnipeg police cruiser last week. Huging has taken her concerns to Sherry Rowlands, the city councillor for the area. Rowlands says solving the housing crisis has to be one of the solutions.
There's a national housing strategy, and we are participating in $25 million worth of grants with the federal government, and the provincial government is at the table.
Now, not everyone agrees the encampment is to blame for recent break-ins. At least one person tells CBC she believes lower income housing and gang activity in the area are factors. The Red River X is taking a swing at the John Bloomberg Sports Complex. The city-owned property sits within the arm of Headingley. Earlier this year, the city looked for someone to take it over. The nonprofit Red River X Association has made a proposal. CEO Garth Rogerson says the site could be redeveloped for a variety of sports.
Why wouldn't you develop it? I mean, it's just sitting there, it's screaming out for development and ready to go.
The City of Winnipeg says the X is the only organization that has made a proposal. A decision will be made next year. A lawsuit filed last week alleges the death of a 20-year-old woman at a Manitoba hospital was caused by improper dosing given by medical staff. The woman went to the hospital in Portage la Prairie in 2022 with high levels of acetaminophen in her system. That is a common pain reliever found in Tylenol. The lawsuit says the woman was given the antidote used for acetaminophen overdoses, but she was given way too much, 66 grams over a 12-hour period instead of just 4. The woman's liver function worsened, and she died days later from the effects of fluid on her brain. The lawsuit says the amount of acetaminophen she took before going to hospital wasn't enough to have killed her. The woman's family now is seeking damages in her death, and CBC News has reached out to Southern Health, which is responsible for that hospital in Portage la Prairie. We have not yet heard back. The first group of female police officers to join the RCMP 50 years ago is going to be celebrated this weekend at a reunion in Regina. Winnipegger Carol Briggs was part of the class of cadets known as Troop 17. Briggs says she was the first in the class to start working. She started as a police officer at Winnipeg's airport before moving on to work in intelligence.
There were times when we had to surveil motorcycle gangs, and that was a little scary, along with exciting, I guess, and some car chases maybe, where we would be following someone and they, were going too fast, and we had to go fast and break a few laws along the way, I guess.
As the first woman officers, Briggs says the group was the focus of a lot of media attention at the time. She says they were given men's uniforms, and some of the women's got purses for their pistols. And while she doesn't see herself as a trailblazer, she knows a lot of other people do. And it was a blast off this morning for 4 civilian astronauts.
4, 3, 2, 1, ignition.
That's SpaceX's latest mission taking off from Cape Canaveral. Among other things, the Polaris Dawn mission is going to feature the first ever commercial spacewalk. It will also scheduled to be the farthest journey from Earth by any spacecraft since the NASA moon landings. The 4 non-professional astronauts are expected to return this weekend. You can find more news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Count me out.
Me too.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks to Heather Wells, to Abby Adeyemi, Chloe Friesen, and Kevin Nepatebo, all in our live crew this morning, as well in our news center, Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo. All right. Speaking of Chloe, last look at our commute.
I got a call on the computer line from Thomas. Broke the streak.
Thomas.
It's all right. Northbound St. Mary's, if you are heading to the downtown, very slow moving, very backed up. Starts around St. Anne's right there, but just be prepared. Some traffic on the way to downtown on St. Mary's.
We're being cheeky, Thomas. We're actually really glad you called.
I'm really glad Thomas called.
All right, last look at the weather, Abby.
A mix of sun and cloud with local smoke and warm temperatures across the province today. Winnipeg will see a high of 30, while other regions like Brandon and Steinbach will also reach similar temperatures with breezy conditions and potential thunderstorms in some areas.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We're back again tomorrow with another edition of Information Radio. I'm back again at noon for the noon show and to host the call-in between 12:30 and 1. So hopefully you can join us over your lunch hour. And a reminder, Thursday we're live in Elmwood, Transcona to cover the upcoming by-election there. We've invited all the candidates to be part of our broadcast. So if you want to as well, please join us at the Elm, which is 163 Henderson Highway. Got to double check that before we get off the air here. Sit tight, listeners. I got it right. 163 Henderson Highway. So the Elm Pizzeria and Cafe. Thanks to the owners for having us there. Maybe you'll be there as well on Thursday. All right, take care. The Currents coming up next.